Cedar Hill Cemetery isn't much to look at in daylight. It's a little sloped patch near the old water tower, fenced with a mix of chain link and a section of wood that never lined up right, so the planks leaned like smokers at the end of a shift. It sits a few blocks off Beltline, past the defunct feed store with the sun-faded Go Longhorns sign and across from a lot where somebody tried to open a tire shop and gave up halfway through pouring the slab. You can see the graveyard from the parking lot behind the gas station where I work nights. Around here we call it Cedar Hill Cemetery because calling it just the cemetery sounds like it might belong to somebody else. It's ours, and most nights that feels like a sad little comfort. I picked up the night shift last fall to save for a move that never happened. It's a town where everyone knows whose cousin dented which pickup in high school, and my plan had been to scrape together enough to leave. Then my mom got sick for a bit and needed help, and then she got better, and then I guess I just kept working nights because it was easier than starting over. My best friend Mason works mornings at the same place. He jokes that we share a life. Like divorced parents share custody of a kid. He clocks out, I clock in. We leave each other notes about the coffee filters and which pump is acting up. My girlfriend at the time, Lena, tended bar over at Casey's when they still tried to make live music happen before that went away too. It was Mason who told me first about the whistling. "You're gonna think I'm messing with you," he said one day, leaning across the counter to steal a handful of sunflower seeds. "Last night around 2:30, from the cemetery, like a little kid trying to whistle. Off key. I went outside to check the trash and it sounded like it was right behind the fence. I laughed because that's the reflex, but I still looked toward the hill. Maybe it was one of the kids from the apartments. Nah," he said, shaking his head. "It wasn't like that. There was fog, man, like movie fog. And there's never fog here. We get fog, just not often. When it does roll in, it comes from the lakeside and slides past the neighborhoods, like somebody turning down a dimmer switch. That night it came thick and low and I didn't think about fog when I first heard the sound. My brain tried to make it into something normal. A truck's brakes, a stray cat, wind pushing through the split pickets of the fence. But it wasn't any of those. It was a few uncertain notes, the kind adults might whistle to soothe a baby, only out of tune and not confident. Like whoever was making the sound had learned it by imitation and kept getting it wrong. I went to the back door of the station and pushed it open. Cold air slipped in around me. It was after 2. The pumps were empty. Across Beltline, the signal blinked yellow to nobody. I stepped out, tossing a bag of cup lids into the big plastic can because that made me feel like I had a reason to stand there. The whistling stopped immediately, like whoever was doing it had held a breath. A second, stretched out, and then 2. When I started to think I'd imagined it, the sound came again. 3 notes, then a pause. It came from up by the cemetery fence. I told myself it was some teenager playing a prank. I told myself it was a bird. I told myself all kinds of things, so I didn't have to tell myself the truth, which is that I was afraid. I went back in. I locked the door. I watched the monitors until sunrise like they were going to explain something. The next morning, Mason came in with a grease spot on his hoodie and a grin he gets when he knows something. "You heard it," he said, not a question. I tried to make a dumb face. He didn't buy it. "I heard something." "Uh-huh." He leaned on the counter and lowered his voice. "You know the story, right? Every town's got a story," I said. In our town's version, there'd been a boy buried up there whose mother used to whistle him the same lullaby every night because he couldn't fall asleep without it. Some versions said he died from pneumonia in the 40s. Some said he drowned in the quarry in the 70s. A couple people swore he was hit by a truck on Beltline chasing a red ball that rolled into the street. In the way of small towns, every version was true to the person telling it. Mason's aunt worked at City Hall. She said the records burned in a fire back in '59, which sounds convenient, but also like the kind of thing that really does happen. Around here, people hear him when the fog comes, Mason said. Supposed to be if you whistle back, he follows you home. We both laughed at that because it was the part you could laugh at. I went home, slept late, and told myself not to think about fog. That night, Lena came by during my break with burgers from the place down the street. We sat on the curb out back. Mop water from the laundromat next door trickled along the edge of the pavement and disappeared into the grass. She wore a big sweater and her hair pulled through the back of a cap, and the way she set her burger down to talk with her hands made me feel like everything might work out for once. Halfway through fries, she glanced up at the cemetery and said, "Heard it yet? Don't you start." "What?" "My grandma used to talk about it. She said people would take their babies there when they wouldn't sleep. Not to be weird, like to sit in the car in the parking lot and the whistling would start and the baby would knock out, like the boy was jealous and wanted the mother's attention." "You're not helping." She smiled and bumped my shoulder. "I'll pick you up in the morning, after your shift. We'll get kolaches and I'll protect you from the fog." I didn't tell her I liked the idea. Around 2, the fog came again, thicker than the night before, pushing into the parking lot and swallowing the base of the streetlights, so the bulbs floated in mist like pale coins. The whistling started faint and grew stronger. 3 notes, then 4, then the first notes again, back and forth like a kid practicing and stopping to see if anyone noticed. A car pulled into the lot, then another. People get edgy in fog. I get it. But these cars didn't park at the pumps. They rolled slow and then stopped with their headlights pointed toward the graveyard. One of the drivers kept the rock station on low. Another got out and leaned on his fender like he was watching a high school football game. I knew both of them, Mr. Hall from the hardware store and a guy named Curtis who does some kind of HVAC work and drinks too hard on Thursdays. "Y'all okay?" I called, stepping to the edge of the sidewalk. They didn't answer at first. Then, Mr. Hall raised one hand without looking away from the hill and said, "Just listening." I stood there with them, feeling like the world had slipped 1 inch to the left. The whistling never grew loud, but it felt close, like it was being breathed at the edge of my ear. It moved, too. 1 second it was near the old angel statue. The next it felt like it was down by the corner where the fence dips. I didn't whistle back. I'm not brave enough to pretend I'm that kind of person. The next day, Mason told me he'd gone up to the cemetery with a sack of marble chips because he'd heard on Facebook that people were finding little piles arranged on certain graves. Some folks said it was kids. Somebody else said it was the caretaker. A lady swore it was coyotes doing it with their noses, which was so strange no one knew how to argue. "You went up there? At night?" I asked. "After work," he said. "Sunset. It's just a yard with rocks and a couple trees. I left a little pile on a kid's grave. Born in 2008, died in 2016. There were toy cars on it. I think somebody keeps those up, I figured." He didn't finish. He didn't have to. We both had brothers who left and didn't come back. You do small things for strangers because you can't fix what's yours. That evening, Lena texted that she was closing early and would come by to keep me company. It made me feel stupid happy for someone my age. I kept checking my phone behind the counter. At 9:30, an old man came in. I didn't know. He had a creased face like a paper bag and a heavy ring of keys that clinked against his thigh when he walked. He bought a coffee and one of those pre-wrapped brownies nobody actually likes. When I handed him his change, he said, "You keep your doors locked after midnight, son?" "Usually," I said. "Good. Don't answer him if he whistles." He left before I could say anything else. I watched him cross the lot and head up toward the graveyard. The keys told me he might be the caretaker. We've never had one officially, as far as I know. People just sort of tend what's theirs. But there's always somebody who takes on more than they have to. He walked like the hill knew his feet. The fog hadn't come in yet, but there was a feel in the air. A glassy weight, the way it is before a storm. Around 2, Lena texted that she was parking. I went to the back door to prop it with my shoulder, because even though I'm not supposed to, I always did for her. The fog had poured over everything like milk, white and soft and making sound weird, like it got swallowed before it reached you. I heard her shoes on the grit and then her voice, light. "Boo." I jumped. She laughed and then sobered because the whistling had started from the hill. 3 notes, pause. 3 notes again, not matching each other perfectly. It was a child's mouth trying to find a tune. "Let's go look," she said, like you might say, "Let's go see if the raccoon got in the trash again." "You're kidding. We can stay by the fence. We'll go to that low spot." I used to cut through there to the park. Every part of me said no. Another part of me saw her hand hovering and didn't want to be the kind of person who pulled back. I locked the door. I slid the bolt on the side gate. We crossed the lot along the strip where the asphalt meets the crabgrass, and my shoes felt too loud. The two of us climbed the little slope. Fog slicked the grass and wet our cuffs. We reached the chain link and stood with our fingers hooked into the diamond pattern like we were waiting for a band to start. On the other side was the road, and then the cemetery fence. It's only a few steps across, but in the fog it felt like a wider country. The whistling went silent as we stopped. I felt the back of my neck know we'd made a decision and was now waiting to see if it was a dumb one. "There," Lena whispered, tilting her chin toward the far corner. At first I saw nothing. Then I saw what she meant. Not a shape so much as a difference in the fog, a thicker place, the way your eye catches where something should be when it isn't. It moved. Slowly. Not like an animal. Like a person learning again how to walk. It passed the angel statue and didn't bend the grass. A second later, the whistling started up again, very soft. The tune skipped and restarted as if a thought had interrupted it. "Hey," Lena said, before I could stop her, and she whistled back. Just once, the same 3 notes we'd heard, but a little more in tune. The fog held its breath. Then from somewhere a fraction to our right, 3 notes came again, closer. The darker place in the fog seemed to pivot. I could swear I saw the angle of a small head. Lena squeezed my fingers. "It's a kid," she said, in a voice halfway, between relief and something else. A new sound cut through, a metal clank, then the uneven jingle of keys. A figure came out of the fog with the careful gait of the old man. He'd lit a lantern, the kind made to look old, but probably bought at Tractor Supply. The glow flattened the fog into layers. "Don't answer him," he said. "Not if you want to sleep in your own bed tonight." "We weren't," I started. He looked right at me. "You already did." Something like embarrassment, sharp and stupid, clenched my stomach. Lena let go of my hand. "We're just watching," she said. "We're not hurting anything." "Haven't you ever noticed the gates don't keep out what wants in?" he said, not unkindly. "Come morning, they'll be where they're supposed to be. Night makes everything else its own." He stepped between the graves without looking down, like he knew where not to put his feet. The whistling moved too, slipping past him as if it didn't care he was there. The lantern light made the pale stone glow and left everything past its reach darker, so whatever was outside that circle felt thicker. "Go on home," he told us. "Lock your doors. If he comes to your porch and whistles, you keep your mouth shut and you keep the lights off." "Will he?" Lena started. He shook his head. "No questions, not tonight." We backed down the slope, feeling like we were doing it wrong. I kept waiting for a raccoon to break the spell by knocking over a trash can, for a car to swing in blasting a bass line, for some regular thing to remind us we were standing 50 yards from a soda fountain and a shelf of propane. Exchange slips, nothing did. We circled the building and went in the back, locked the door on both bolts, and stood there in the chemical-cleaned fluorescent quiet, breathing like we'd jogged. I made us coffee and dumped in too much powdered creamer. We didn't talk about what we'd seen. Lena went home around 3:30 because she had a double the next day. She kissed my cheek like you pat a dog and promised to text when she got in. It was still thick outside when she left. On the camera, I watched her car's taillights fade to 2 smears. I watched the parking lot wait. I watched the fog make rivers around the light poles. At 4, something tapped the glass. It was small and delicate, 3 quick ticks like fingernails. I stood in the back doorway looking down the length of the shelves toward the sliding front door. The lights reflected my face back at me. I told myself it could be a moth. It came again. Tick, tick, tick. I walked up the aisle slow. The cold case hummed. My breath felt too loud. I reached the front and stopped. The sliding door stayed shut. Beyond it, the lot was white soup and the orange shape of a traffic cone someone had abandoned. I didn't see a face. I didn't see anything flesh. But on the glass, about the height of my belt, A small shape bloomed, a foggy circle like breath on a mirror. It appeared, held steady for 2 heartbeats and then faded. When I leaned in, the glass was cool. On the inside, a perfect oval pressed its moisture. You could call it a prank if you wanted to. You could call it condensation from the AC. You could call it a lot of names that wouldn't change what it looked like. A little kid's breath on the other side, right where a mouth would be if someone stood pressed into the door. I didn't open it. I went to the office and sat there and stared at the stale donut someone had left and waited for daylight, like it was the next bus out. Lena texted at 4:12. Home. A minute later. That was weird. I typed, "Are you okay?" and watched the bubble appear and vanish. Then she wrote, "It followed me down S. Clark. It was in the ditch, whistling, and then, it's on my porch. I'm not answering." My chest went tight enough that for a second I thought I was going to black out. My fingers wrote, "Don't open the door," before the thought finished. She didn't text back. I called. It rang and rang. I was halfway to telling myself to go over there and halfway to telling myself I couldn't leave the store when the office line startled me. No one knows that number but the owner, but I answered anyway. It was Lena. Her voice was too soft. "It stopped," she said. "Okay." It stopped, and then, a minute later, the wind chimes on Mrs. Diaz's porch started moving. "There's no wind." "Okay," I said again because that's all my brain would allow. And then someone walked by my window and it was too short to be a person. I'm not looking, I'm not. But I heard it go down the steps. "It's not whistling now. Don't open the door," I said. I'm just sitting on the floor. I can hear the keys though." "The keys?" she breathed out, and I heard the sound in stereo, her breath on the phone and the memory of it on the glass. Like the old man's, I can hear them jangling, but there's no one out there. We stayed on the phone like that until she fell asleep or the line died. I couldn't tell which. I sat in the office and told myself not to go check the door again. Daylight came shabby and thin, but it came. With it, the fog drained away like somebody pulled the plug on the world. By 6, the trees were just trees again, and the headstones sat where they always sit. Mason came in with a powdered sugar donut and laughed at the look on my face until I told him not to. We made coffee and I walked out to the dumpsters like a dare. The ground where the fog had been felt damp in a way that wasn't due. At the side of the building, just below the height of the sliding door, I found 3 ovals on the glass. Faint now, but there if you knew how to look. On the concrete below, there was a track like someone had dragged a toe. Not a shoe, a toe, making a small half-moon in the dust. I went to Lena's after work. She'd slept with the lights on and was in that deep, tired place where your body moves but your mind is taking the long way to everything. We checked the porch. There was nothing to see. The wind chimes were still. On the doormat lay a toy car, one of those cheap ones you can buy by the bag. Red paint chipped off the hood. It could have been from anywhere. It could have been from 100. She looked at me and I looked at her, and we didn't say finders keepers because it didn't feel like a joke that wanted to be made. The next night I told myself I wouldn't look toward the hill. I told myself I'd focus on stocking and the rack of air fresheners and the guy who buys scratch-offs with the same resigned shrug every Thursday. Around 1, the fog didn't come, which I took as a small miracle. Around 2 it did, but thin, a gauze instead of a blanket. The whistling came anyway. This time it didn't sound like it came from the hill. It sounded like it came from the alley between the station and the laundromat. I stood at the end of the chips aisle and listened to 3 notes drift from the place where the soda machines hum. It was softer than a whisper. It was also not nothing. I didn't go check. I locked the back door again even though it was already locked. I turned the deadbolt and heard it click like a punctuation mark. At 3, the old man came back in. He bought another coffee and another brownie. He looked at me like he'd already decided whether I was worth telling a thing to, and decided against it. I gave him his change. At the door he said, "You keep your mouth shut last night?" "I did," I said. Then, because some stubborn part of me wanted to push back, "Why does it matter? What happens if someone whistles back?" He turned the cup in his hand once, the lid squeaking, and said, "He gets confused. He thinks you're his mother. Or, his friend. He follows the sound. He doesn't know any better. You don't want to be the one he follows. I don't want him to be alone, I said, before I knew I was going to say it. That's the trick, the old man said, and left. After that it didn't stop. Not the way you want things to stop. Some nights there was no fog, and still, somewhere out past the dented ice machine, 3 notes would come and hover like a question you didn't want to be asked. People stopped, pretending they weren't hearing it. If you want to know what I mean, check our town's Facebook group. It's all the same arguments. Teenagers, coyotes, deport the fog. I know a guy who can fix that. Except with a new rhythm underneath, where people say they're tired in a way coffee doesn't help. One morning, Mason came in with a scrape on his cheek and wouldn't tell me how he got it. Fell, he said, and then laughed because we both knew how that sounded. It's fine. Hey, something left this on my step. He put a marble on the counter. It was blue with a white swirl. I put my fingertip on it and the cold felt like it ran up my arm. We tried returning things. We walked up to the cemetery during daylight with our items cupped like offerings. The old man saw us and didn't say anything. We left the toy car and the marble on the grave with the toy cars. The headstone said Michael James R., and the rest was worn to a soft suggestion. There were coins on another grave, all pennies, all heads up. On one there was a note in a kid's handwriting that said, "Miss you, bud." We stood there feeling like a person who has walked into a room where a family is fighting and doesn't know where to look. That night, the whistling came from inside the store. Not loud, not a performance. Just 3 notes from between aisles 3 and 4, right where the cereal meets the chips. A sound like someone getting the hang of it and then stopping to listen for you. I stood at the end of the aisle and stared at the gap where the sound had been. The fluorescents buzzed. The cooler hummed. My heart pounded like it thought the rest of me was going to run and needed to catch up. "Please don't," I said, and I don't know who I was talking to. After that, I started bringing a little radio from home and playing it low, not to drown it out, to give it something else to choose. I tuned it to the oldies station my mom likes. When Hush Little Baby played in a commercial for a mattress store, which is a level of on the nose I didn't think ads could do, I turned it off and laughed too hard because the other choice was to feel something scarily close to crying. One more thing, because I know how these stories go and I don't want to leave out the part where I did the dumbest possible thing. I whistled back. Not to the hill, not to the alley. In my kitchen, after a night where the sound drifted through, the vents like a smell, I found myself standing by the sink with my lips pursed and a tune in my head before I realized what I was doing. It was nothing. 3 notes, a pause. The same 3 notes. Quiet, like you sing to yourself. It answered. From the porch, I froze. I didn't look at the door, I didn't turn. Dizzy pinwheels rolled across my vision like when you stand too fast. I stood there and held my breath until my ribs hurt, and then I let it out in a string so thin it was practically not there. The answering whistle came again, closer, right against the other side of the door. I felt the urge to go open it like an itch. I focused on the counter's edge instead, the way the laminate had peeled back and been glued in a little crooked. The urge passed. The whistle came a 3rd time and then stopped, as if a thought had distracted whoever was doing it. The porch creaked once. Keys jingled lightly. From nowhere. My AC kicked on and the sound in the house shifted like a curtain. I stood there and waited. After a long time, my phone lit up with a text from Lena that said just, and it made me close my eyes. I wrote back, "I'm fine." Later she told me she got the same urge sometimes, to open the door because surely something you love is on the other side. The town has trained us out of it. We've become a place of people who don't answer knocks after dark. That's its own kind of sad. If you want a clean ending, I don't have one. The old man still walks the hill with his lantern some nights. I think his name is Powell. Somebody said he used to teach shop at the high school. He won't take money if you try to give it. He accepts coffee with a nod like it's a tax he respects. Lena and I aren't together anymore. Not because of this, but not because of this. It changes you to be the kind of person who keeps the lights off on purpose. Mason moved in with his cousin off Lake Ridge and sleeps with a box fan on and a radio tuned to static. The fog comes when it wants. The whistling isn't every night. Sometimes weeks go by and there's nothing but coyotes yipping out past the fields and the odd train moaning like a big sad thing remembering itself. Then it'll come back, soft as a breath on glass, and everything in me will tighten like a string. The other day I was restocking the rack of windshield washer fluid and a woman came in holding a baby who wouldn't settle. She was tired, the way new parents look tired. She paid for milk and stood there like she was working up to asking a question. Finally she said, "Is it true? If I park up there with him, he'll, you know." I knew. I also knew I had no right to tell anybody what to do with their grief. I thought about coins on gravestones and marbles in pockets and doors kept closed. I thought about how loneliness is a kind of weather you can drown in. "I don't think it works like that," I said. And I might have been lying and I might have been telling the truth. "Be careful driving in the fog." She nodded and left. The bell over the door rang. A truck on Beltline whooshed by. When the door swung shut, the glass held a foggy oval for a heartbeat, in the shape of a child's breath, and then it was gone, and there was only me and the flicker of the fluorescent light that always threatens to die but never does. I turned the radio up just a bit and went back to work. Sometimes when I take the trash out and it's the hour where even the stray dogs sleep, I'll hear it again from the hill. 3 notes, then 3. I don't answer. Not because I'm brave or good. Because I don't trust my voice to stay steady. Because I know how it feels to follow a sound and hope it belongs to you. I lock the back door and stand there until the minute turns and the clock makes its little click. The fog leans against the fence like a tired kid, and I pretend I can't see the difference in it. The place where something almost like a boy waits. Not angry, not kind, just patient, as if the whole world is a hallway and all you ever have to do is whistle and wait for your mother to whistle back. Old Man Farley said he saw it first, a dim lantern swinging between the rows of graves, but when he called out, the light didn't stop. It drifted toward him, slow and deliberate, as though something wanted him to follow. That was how the talk started when I came back to town last fall to clean out my dad's place. Maple Grove is small. People will nod at you at the gas pump and call you by your dad's name by accident. They'll tell you where to get the best ribs, what days the train blocks Main Street, and which parts of the old cemetery you shouldn't walk through after dark. They'll also tell you that Old Man Farley exaggerates, especially since his wife passed and he started talking to a photo frame like it could answer back. But they said his voice shook when he told the story, so folks listened. I didn't plan to listen. I was there to box up decades of stuff and argue with the realtor about the roof. My sister Haley could only get 2 days off work, so it was mostly me and a key that didn't want to turn in a swollen door. The house smelled like dust, leather belts, and that blue soap my dad swore by. I found military ribbons in a shoebox, a map with 3 counties circled and no explanation, and a grocery list he never finished. Milk, bread, lamp oil, lamp oil. That detail stuck, because I hadn't seen a lantern around our place in years. We used to have one when I was a kid and the power went out during storms. It was a squat green thing with a little window that collected soot. My dad would pump it, light it, and the living room would look like a stage. He'd say, "Don't touch the glass." And I'd touch it anyway and burn my fingertip and then feel oddly safe because the house glowed in that warm, old-time way. I heard about Farley's lantern on the second night at the Maple Diner when Haley and I were trying to split a plate of pancakes and not talk about the attic. My friend Mason, who never left town and now works for the county, leaned on the back of our booth and asked if we'd heard the mess going on down by the Grove. "What mess?" I said. "The lantern," Mason said with that little grin he uses when he wants you to think he's not rattled. Farley saw it. Sheriff's deputy saw it. Couple of high school kids said it chased him halfway down Kennedy Road. People are saying it's that caretaker, you know, the one who fell in the soft ground years ago, or somebody trying to be him. Haley rolled her eyes. "Chased them? With a lantern?" "They said it moved like Mason waggled his hand in the air. Like it wasn't somebody holding it. Like it was dragging itself. The handle stayed level while the light swung. He waited for me to laugh. I didn't. I thought of the grocery list in my pocket, the last word written in my dad's careful print. "What caretaker?" I asked. "You don't remember, old mister. Bell?" Mason said. "He kept the place up when we were kids. Died after a rain up in Section C. Ground sink, the kind the backhoe makes easy work of, but your legs don't. They found his lantern 3 days later, 2 rows over, still upright. Glass cracked. People said it was weird how clean the crack was." I shrugged. "I was away by then." "Right," Mason said. "College boy. Anyway, Farley's got the gate key now. Says somebody keeps unlatching it from the inside. Says he locks it, comes back in the morning, it's open with that latch carefully set down like a spoon next to a bowl. Haley kicked me under the table. "Don't, he's going to try to take you out there." "Take him," Mason said, hearing her anyway. "He used to mow that place with your dad. It's nostalgia. Plus I got to drive out that way after my shift. If y'all are going, I'll make sure you don't get chased by a light bulb." We ended up going because there's only so much you can ignore in a small town where everything looks a little like the past. The gate at Maple Grove is a white arch that lists toward the right. It's painted with clean block letters, Maple Grove Cemetery. There's a smaller sign on the side, hours, dawn to dusk. Please respect the dead. The chain link fence along the road has been fixed so many times it looks like patchwork. There are oaks that were there before the oaks were called oaks by anyone we'd know. And the ground dips in odd places, the way ground always does where people keep opening it on purpose. We got there at sunset. Farley was waiting with a thermos. He hugged me like he was checking that I was solid. He looked smaller up close, like someone had tightened all the screws in him a little too much. His hands were spotted and careful. "Your dad," he said, like it was a greeting and a question and a prayer all at once. He'd tell you to keep the gate chain tight. He'd say, "You want trouble? You leave a door open." "We're just here to look," I said. He nodded like I'd passed a test I didn't remember studying for. He unlocked the gate and slipped the chain off with the tenderness of someone handling jewelry. The latch clicked down against the post. That sound is in my head now when the house is too quiet. A tidy, specific clink. We walked the paths between the rows. Early stones up front, names worn to soft commas. Newer ones back near the tree line. The kind that have photos sealed in them or little solar lights like porch beacons. Flags stuck in the ground, some leaning, some held upright by Ahmad. There's an angel statue near the middle whose face has streaks like tears, but it's just rain that catches where the stone is pitted. It wasn't scary. It was sad in that ordinary way cemeteries are. I've always thought graveyards are more honest than a lot of places. They show you what happens when regular people run out of days. The sun fell in behind the oaks. The crickets staged their nightly argument. From the road, a truck's base thumped and faded. Mason's county-issued SUV sat outside the gate with his elbow propped in the open window. We didn't see anything until it got truly dark. Not the photogenic blue of evening, but the black that swallows color. Even the marble turned gray. Haley said she was getting cold, and she was. But I think she meant that the air had changed. Sometimes you can feel that. A hush that's not shared silence, but something pushing it from above, flattening everything. We were near Section C, where the ground has a sag that collects leaves. Farley had taken us there on purpose. He walked like he always walked, feet apart, one hand barely touching the top of each headstone as he passed them, like he was steadying them. He told us how Mr. Bell used to fix the little carved lambs when kids knocked them loose. He told us how bellflowers used to grow uninvited in summer and how the name bothered him. He said all this and then, mid-sentence, stopped. His thermos tilted. He whispered my name without looking at me. I followed his line of sight. At first, I thought someone had stuck a battery puck light in a jar. It was that exact color, warm, a little too steady. It hovered at about chest height just beyond the next row. It swung an inch left, an inch right. Not enough to be wind, not the way the branches were moving. And attached to that swing, touching nothing, was the faint suggestion of a handle, a loop of darker dark, Like when your eye can tell there's glass because of how it fails to swallow light the way air does. "Hello?" Haley called. Because she does that, she takes the direct route. The light didn't stop. It drifted toward us, as if it had heard, but didn't think we meant it for them. It didn't bob the way a flashlight does in a human hand. It glided and then gently course-corrected like something was pulling on it from behind with a string, like there was a place it was supposed to arrive and we were between it and there. Farley put his hand on my arm, a surprisingly strong grip. "Don't step off the path," he said. Just don't." "Is someone there?" I said. "We're with the county, we don't want any trouble." The lantern moved closer. I could see now that the light wasn't perfectly steady. It breathed. It swelled a little, dimmed a little, like a real flame fussing inside a shield. There was a smell, too, very slight, like the metal taste of old pennies and the kind of oil you only smell in barns and antique shops. Memory mixed with chemistry. Haley took out her phone. The screen stayed black. She swore and hit the button and the battery icon flashed red and then cleared. Mason's SUV headlights clicked on by themselves like he'd leaned on the column, and the light turned its attention. Not its face, it didn't have a face, but its general aim tilted away from us toward the gate. It swung a little more eager now and continued along the row as if we were no concern at all. "It wants me to follow," Farley breathed. "It always goes to the same place." "What place?" I asked, but he was already stepping, keeping, to the path like a kid on a balance beam. "We went because that's what people do when strange things act like they're normal. It's easier to keep going than to break the story by stopping." The lantern moved just far enough ahead that you couldn't tell what it was attached to. It rounded the angel and threaded between two cedars with the neatness of someone who'd made the walk 1,000 times. It passed a low stone that said, "Infant Daughter." It paused at a stretch of ground where the grass was sparser, a rectangle that sank a little deeper than the rest. If you weren't looking for it, you'd think a mower had scalped it by accident. Farley stopped there on the path's edge, shoes toed in. The light hung above the sunken spot and swung slow like a pendulum marking a choice. Then it slid to the right and hovered over the next space. Another dip, another rectangle. It did this 3 times, a patient teacher pointing out mistakes on a chalkboard. Then it backed up, and hovered over the first. "What is this?" Haley asked. "What are we supposed to see?" "Subsidence," Mason said from behind us, making all of us jump. He'd come in without us noticing. He kept his voice normal, official. "Ground settling. Happens. Doesn't usually happen in a straight line like that." Farley swallowed. His hand was on his chest. "They moved 3 last winter. Said the records were muddy and they had to double-check where plots were supposed to be. They dug, and the soil kept slipping, and they said it was old fill from the highway project in the 80s. I said, 'Why is there old fill here?' They told me to go home." The lantern dipped, almost like a nod. Then it crept forward, across the sunken ground, and stopped at the base of a big maple with a low branch that looks like a bent arm. It hung there, the light loose and tired. It brightened once, twice, then dimmed as if whoever was inside it had set it down and stepped back. The air lightened around us like we were able to breathe again without noticing we hadn't been. We stood there for a long time. Haley got her phone to wake up and took a video of nothing. Mason walked the perimeter with a little flashlight and a look that said he was going to report this as a break-in even though the trespasser was a story. Farley took off his cap and turned it in his hands. When we finally headed back to the gate, the latch that had been carefully set down on the post was now hanging at an angle like someone had lifted it and changed their mind midway through. Mason swore under his breath, the way people do when they're grateful for something they can point to that isn't a ghost. He fiddled the latch until it looked straight again. Then he had to walk a deputy through what happened. Because of course a neighbor had called when they saw lights moving in the cemetery after hours. The deputy was younger than us by a decade and had that new cop posture. He looked into our faces one at a time, saw that we believed what we were saying and didn't make fun of us for it. He did that thing where he wrote in a notebook to mark time. When he was done, he said, "I'll keep an eye on it. Why don't you all go home?" Home was Dad's house. Haley wanted to sleep there one more night before she drove back. We made up beds with mismatched sheets and listened for mice in the walls. At around 2 a.m., the smell of lamp oil rolled through the hallway like someone had opened a door. Haley called my name from the guest room, voice flat with the effort of not screaming. "It's in here," she said. "Don't come in." I went anyway. The room looked the way it always did, with the braided rug and the ceramic lamp that looks like a pineapple. No light moved, but the air felt crowded, like the room had filled with old breath. On the dresser, a small black smudge curved along the edge of the mirror like a dash of soot. "You see that?" I whispered. Haley nodded. "It wasn't there when I brushed my teeth. I would have seen it. We didn't sleep much. We used the TV as a nightlight. Around dawn, the smell faded and the smudge broke up, like someone wiped the mirror with a dry thumb. The next day I tried to be normal. I wrapped dishes in newspaper and boxed my dad's bowling trophy and found a stack of letters rubber banded together that he'd never sent. In the late afternoon, a guy from the funeral home came by to pick up some photos we were lending for the Veterans Wall. He was polite, gentle in his movements the way people in his line of work are. He noticed the lantern on top of the kitchen cabinet before I did. "Did your dad use that?" he asked. I looked up. The green lantern from my childhood sat there, dusty, handle skewed. I hadn't seen it when we first came in. I didn't put it there. I climbed on a chair to bring it down and saw that the glass had a hairline crack running, clean from top to bottom, like someone had traced it with a razor. It was so straight it looked drawn. "Probably," I said, voice even. He kept weird stuff. That night we went back to the cemetery because it felt wrong not to. We told ourselves we were going to return the lantern to wherever it belonged, like that would put things back the way they were. Mason met us at the gate, but he stayed in the car this time, radio murmuring. He said, "I'll be right here," and meant it. But his eyes stayed on his paperwork like he was giving us privacy for something he didn't want the words for. We didn't need to go far. The lantern appeared the second our feet hit the path, as if it had been waiting where we left it. It brightened at the sight of the one I carried just a little. I can't explain how I know that's what it did, but I felt that weird small thrill you get when a baby recognizes you. I held out the green lantern and felt silly, like I was trying to feed a deer crackers from my palm. The light hovered closer, until the two handles nearly touched. The air between them got warm. "What do you want us to do?" I asked, and it felt like a prayer. The light turned and started that same slow glide toward Section C. We followed. When we reached the sunken rectangle, the lantern dipped once and the ground gave a sigh. It was subtle, but the soil shifted like something underneath had settled a fraction of an inch. Haley grabbed my sleeve and pointed. In the dirt where the grass thinned, a straight line, maybe 6 inches long, appeared. The kind you get when a heavy thing drags, not rolling, but pulled. It wasn't where a coffin would be. It was a little offset, as if someone had buried a box close by and then moved it a foot over. The lantern hovered over the line. I could swear I heard chain, not clanking, but that metal-on-metal whisper when links rub while being held very still. It made the hairs on my arms lift. "We need to get the county out here," Haley said. "We need to do this the right way." "Yeah," I said. "Tomorrow, daylight." The lantern brightened, then dimmed, then brightened again, a steady rhythm like someone counting. It did it 3 times, and then went out. Just like that. Darkness ate the place where it had been. We stood in our own weak flashlights and the sudden knowledge that we had been following something and now it had left and the night was just night again. The smell hung around for a minute, then drifted off like it had better places to be. We went home. Mason filed something official. We slept badly. In the morning, the ground was the same as at night, sunk, quiet, pretending to be only dirt. The county sent a crew with a ground-penetrating radar unit that looked like a lawnmower. They did their grid and they did their nodding. They said there were anomalies, which is a beautiful word for things we aren't prepared to explain, while being recorded. They put little flags out, orange, then blue, then orange again, and asked us to step back behind the tape. By afternoon, they'd opened one rectangle. The backhoe did it fast, scooping careful bites like it had been trained to be respectful. People gathered along the fence because that's what people do, the church ladies from the diner, a retired teacher, two teenagers on bikes with that rangy look like they haven't grown into their bones, the deputy, Mason, even old man Farley, leaning on his cane but acting like it was for the dust. They found a coffin where a coffin should be. They said the name out loud as they checked the record. The second rectangle had nothing, just filled dirt and some rocks that looked like they'd been borrowed from the creek. The third rectangle had the end of a crate, like something used for shipping, rough wood and rusted nails, but no crate itself. The man running the backhoe said, "Huh," and then said, "We're done for today." And then the sheriff himself called someone, and suddenly the words historical and property started getting used in the same sentence like shields. They closed the holes, at least the way you close a question when you aren't actually answering it. The flag stayed. The tape stayed. A sign went up on the gate that said, "Section C closed for maintenance." Like closure is a thing you can post. That night the lantern didn't come. We waited at the fence and felt foolish. We went home and tried to be the kind of people who sleep easily. I woke up at 11:17 p.m. The clock made sure I knew the time. And the smell of lamp oil again, softer now, like the ghost of a ghost. I sat up and saw, reflected in the blank TV screen, the suggestion of a light moving down the hall toward the front door. I got up fast enough to make the floor creak. There was nothing in the hall. The front door's bolt was still turned. The chain hung down, touched the wood, and made the tiniest chime when the house settled. In the morning there was soot under the chain, just a smudge that matched the curve of the lantern's handle. I'd like to say we solved it. I'd like to tell you that the county called us later that week and admitted that someone decades ago had shifted bodies around to make room for a road, or that they'd found a lost map in a drawer, and it explained the empty hole, the crate, the way the ground dips in straight lines. I'd like to say the lantern came back and led us to a neat answer, an old ledger, a key box, a name spoken in that careful way we give the dead when we mean to be kind. That's not what happened. What happened is that the tape blew down in a storm. The sign fell over. The lantern came back for other people. Not me. Not Haley. The high school kids who cut across the cemetery on a dare saw it hovering over the angel and ran so hard one of them threw up across the street. The deputy started driving past more often. Mason pretended to be bored whenever anyone brought it up and then kept 2 burner flashlights in his glove box like a person who wants to be caught being prepared. Old man Farley said it stopped coming to him at all, which made him sad in a way he wouldn't name. I left town a week later. There are only so many boxes you can pack before you realize the house is lighter for it, and you aren't. I took the green lantern with me because nobody told me not to. It sat on the floor of the passenger seat, buckled in. I told myself it was just a thing, a souvenir of candlelight when the power went out and my dad's bad jokes. I kept it on a shelf in my apartment, way up where I had to stand on a chair to dust it. When friends came over, they said it was cool. I told them it didn't work, and I meant it until the night I came home and smelled lamp oil on the landing before I even fished out my keys. I live on the 2nd floor. No one in my building uses lamps like that. My hallway has motion sensor, lights that flare white and then settle into a dim. That night, the hall lights were already on. The air tasted metallic. The kind of taste you get when you lick a penny as a kid to freak out your cousin. I unlocked my door and the smell deepened like whatever carried it was sitting just inside waiting for me to open the way you wait for a friend to get to the punchline. I stood there with my hand on the knob. The door was warm. Not hot. Just the way wood gets when a sunbeam falls on it and stays. I opened it and something moved past me, not touching me but making me lean back anyway. The apartment looked normal. The faintest shadow of light hung in the doorway between the hall and the living room where the TV is. I blinked and it was gone, and that was almost worse than if it had stayed and done something. On the bookshelf, the green lantern had shifted. It was turned so that the crack in the glass faced the couch. On the coffee table, the chain from my front door had left a small crescent of soot. That curve again, like a signature. I know what you're thinking. Carbon monoxide. Old pipes. Brain glitch. Sleep paralysis with a costume. I thought that too. I bought a meter. I had a guy from the building come check the boiler. I went to a doctor who told me what I already knew. Some griefs smell like things and you can't stop your body from remembering. A month after I got back, I got a letter. An actual letter, in a white envelope with the county seal faint in the corner. It had one sentence in it from Mason, who never writes anything down he doesn't have to. They relotted Section C, he wrote. Records corrected. 3 stones moved. All good. Then below it, smaller. Old Bell's grandson came by, brought a map. Looks like they used to bury paupers along the edge by the maple. Paper says they were meant to be moved in '84 and somebody... Then the sentence stopped. A line of ink trailed like his pen had stuttered. No explanation why. I called him. He let it ring 5 times and picked up on the 6th, the way he always does. He sounded tired in the way jobs make you when you've been doing them too long. Did you finish that sentence? I asked. Nah, he said. Didn't need to, you get the gist. Somebody what? Somebody didn't, he said, like it was funny but wasn't. Anyway, it's fixed, officially. Is it? You want the official answer or the answer that makes you sleep? Either, I said. Both, he thought. The official answer is the records were corrected and the ground is stable. The answer that makes you sleep is that Mr. Bell did his best, and the light's just his way of checking the gate. The real answer is that I keep seeing a chain mark on the post every morning even when I know I left it clean, and Farley hasn't been back since he took a fall on his steps last week, and I'm too old to chase lights that tell me things I can't put in a report. I wanted to ask about the grandson, what he looked like, what kind of map, if he had a lantern too. I didn't. I said thanks and hung up and put the letter in the same drawer where I keep spare batteries and a list of the things in my life I mean to fix. Tonight I'm writing this because I woke up again at 11:17, because the smell of lamp oil was so soft it could have been in my head, but it wasn't. Because when I walked into the living room, the crack in the lantern's glass had shifted by itself. It's still a straight line, but now it trails a tiny branch at the bottom like a river on a map that decided to add a creek. On my door, the soot mark under the chain is darker. If I wipe it, I know it will smear and I will feel rude, like I've erased a note from someone who only knows how to write in smoke. I keep thinking of all those times my dad made us leave a porch light on when we went out at night. He'd say, "Light tells folks what you mean for them." I didn't understand then that he meant it for more than burglars. He meant it for all the people who forget where their place is after dark, or who remember too well and need a sign that somebody kept their promises. I don't think the lantern in Maple Grove wants to hurt anyone. I think it's out walking its route, the same way Mr. Bell did, picking up what other people set down and pointing at the places the ground doesn't match the paper. I think it wants us to follow, but only far enough to see what we weren't going to see on our own. I think it came to my hallway because I took something that belonged to its root, or because grief is a path we all end up walking and some lights just show up there, whether you ask or not. I'm writing this down like the people on those forums I used to read late at night, the ones where someone says, "This is going to sound dumb, but it happened." I know how it sounds. I know you want a clean end. You want me to say I took the lantern back and the light stopped and the ground settled like a bedspread after someone smooths it with their palms. You want me to say I put the green lantern in the dumpster and it was gone by morning and I felt lighter. I didn't. It's still on the shelf, and the crack is still a straight line that isn't as straight as it was. Last week, I put a note on the inside of my front door where only I can see it. Latch. It's for me because I'm forgetful. It's also for whatever passes by and needs to know I locked it on purpose and not because I forgot and let the dark have the run of the place. The soot mark under the chain has 3 little ticks now, like someone keeping count. Maybe this is me asking for help in a language I don't speak. Maybe I'll wake up one night and the smell will be diesel and it'll be nothing at all. Maybe the lantern will stay on its route and I'll stay on mine, and the only place our paths cross will be the part of the night when the city is quiet, enough to pretend we live where we used to. Or maybe I'll be back in town for Christmas and Mason will say, "Did you hear? They found another line in Section C under the maple, but it's fine, it's fixed, it's official." And he'll look past me, like he's reading the rest of the sentence I'll never let him say out loud. Maybe I'll take the green lantern with me and hang it on the porch hook of the house I'm about to sell just for a minute. and the light will catch a scuff on the doorframe I didn't notice before. Maybe I'll follow it, only as far as the gate. If you drive past Maple Grove at night and see a light moving inside the fence, don't whistle at it, don't dare it, don't run, don't take anything that isn't yours. Keep to the path. If it stops and hovers over a place where the ground looks a shade thinner than the rest, stand there a minute and listen. You might hear chain. You might smell oil. You might feel the air press gently down on everything, like a hand smoothing a bedspread before the night begins. And if when you get home you notice a small curve of soot under your door chain that you can't wipe clean, don't panic. It's not in your house. It's at your door. It's just making sure you latched it. It's just making its rounds, like it always did, like somebody promised to. If it wants you to follow, it will let you know. The light will swing, and you will know it's meant for you. And if that happens, don't step off the path. Not even to be polite. Not even to see better. The ground keeps secrets, and sometimes the kindest thing a lantern can do is show you exactly where not to stand. Every town's got one. The towering angel carved in marble, wings chipped and stained with rain. But in Fairview, folks noticed the ground beneath it sank deeper each year, like the earth itself was swallowing something that wouldn't stay, buried. If you know the angel I'm talking about, you probably grew up where I did. It stands at the top of Bramble Hill Cemetery, just inside the iron gate with the family names welded across the arch. Fairview Rest. It's the kind of angel that looks different depending on the weather. In summer, when it's blazing, the face squints and you swear it's judging you. In cold wind, the robe seems to flutter like it might step down. I'm not writing this to start up old rumors again. I'm writing it because I still wake up coughing black grit, and sometimes when I blow my nose, there's this gray dust in the tissue that smells like a wet fireplace. My sister says it's in my head. My buddy Mason says I'm lucky to be alive. Earl, the groundskeeper, just told me to stop measuring what doesn't want to be measured, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I moved back to Fairview last fall to help sell our mom's house after she passed. Mom had a way of hoarding little things, mailers, church bulletins, every birthday card we ever made her. I took a leave from work, packed up everything, and slept on an air mattress in my old room. My sister, Danny, stayed with her fiancé in the city and drove in on weekends to help. By day we cleaned. By night we went out for greasy diner food and tried not to fight. The only place that felt steady to me in town was the cemetery. It hadn't changed. Same chipping angel, same drooping oak by the veterans section, same little stones that kids leave on their grandparents' graves. Mom used to like to walk up there. She'd talk to Dad like he could hear her, and once a week, without fail, she'd put a quarter at the angel's feet and say, "For the ferryman." I didn't know what that meant then, except that it made her smile. I went up there my first Sunday back. The air smelled like leaf mold and old water. The angel's pedestal had a wide ring of bare dirt around it, like a crop circle. It wasn't. Knew I'd seen it before, but I swear it was lower. Like the pedestal used to be knee-high and now it was more like thigh-high. I stood there a long time, hands in my pockets, and that's when I realized the ground wasn't just lower. It dipped. A shallow bowl had formed around the statue. People had been tossing gravel into it, trying to even it out, and the gravel had disappeared. I walked down to Earl's shed. Earl's been there since I was a kid. Tall, thin, skin like weathered rope. He used to let me ride on the back of the mower if I stayed quiet. "Hey, Earl," I said, leaning against his doorframe. "That sinkhole under the angel, getting worse?" He kept oiling a chain like he hadn't heard me. "So you noticed," he said after a bit. "Been noticing for years. You here to help or here to worry?" "Both," I admitted. He glanced past me at the sky, which was going that soft yellow that means rain tomorrow. It drops after a rain. Some folks say there's a spring under there. Some say it's old mine shafts, though there weren't mines on this hill. Some say it's God pulling on what's his. Which do you say? Earl wound up the chain and hooked it. I say don't park your truck too close to it and don't bring me any tape measures. Has anyone called the county? Maybe they can. They came out, he said. They probed the ground with long rods, said it's soft fill, said to keep away and rope it off. I roped it off. People step over ropes when they want to touch angels. I left it there. Back at the house, Danny was wrapping plates in newspaper on the kitchen floor. "Hey, you go see your girlfriend," she said without looking up. "Angel," I corrected. "The one at Bramble Hill." She made a face. "God, I hate that thing." "You used to love it." "I loved going there with Mom. The angel gives me the creeps. It looks like it's telling on you." That night I dreamed about the angel's feet. Bare marble toes. Dust packed in the nail beds, like real grit. In the dream, the toes flexed. Not a lot. Not like a jump scare. Just little movements as if it was getting feeling back. The week got busy. Realtors came through. A nice couple with a toddler whom the toddler insisted on calling Nana's house, even though he'd never been there. I threw out 3 contractor bags of expired spices from Mom's pantry. And every evening, almost without thinking, I'd drive up to Bramble Hill and walk the rows. The dip around the angel did what Earl said. It sank after it rained. Gravel gone. Flowers leaned inward like they were being whispered to. Somebody had left a white teddy bear, and when I came the next day, the bear was gray. Not wet. Gray. Like it had rolled in ash. I picked it up. It wasn't heavy, but it left a fine film on my palms. That's when I noticed the smell again. Damp smoke. Like laundry dried near a wood stove. I brushed my hands on my jeans. The gray didn't wipe off. It sank into my lines, into the fingerprints, I told Danny. She said I was being dramatic. She also said she'd be up Friday night, and could we please not fight this time? Friday afternoon, I went into the library to get out of the rain. The woman at the desk, Ms. Keene, has known everyone's birthdays since the 80s. "Well, look what the rain dragged in," she said. "What are you looking for, cookbooks, grief pamphlets? We've got both." "History," I said. "Bramble Hill. The angel." Her smile shifted. "You know how faces change when people switch to a different kind of thinking? The party's over kind." "The statue was donated," she said carefully. "By the Ladies' Auxiliary in 1925. There's a plaque if you crouch and brush the ivy away. Says so. I can get you the town ledgers if you want. It's just what? People write stories when they don't know how to live with ordinary facts." She tapped the desk with her pen. "Stay with the facts." She brought out a stack of old town reports. Most were boring. Expenditures, cemetery plots sold. But in a 1979 report, there was an emergency repair upper grounds line item. New fill, 20 cubic yards. A month later, additional fill, 20 more. The year after, an order for grass seed to stabilize Upper Hollow. "Was there a flood?" I asked. "Not that year," Ms. Keene said. "Why so much fill?" "Soft ground." "From what?" "People," she said. And when I frowned, she hastily added, "I mean traffic. You get visitors, they wear places down." I went home and Googled, but you know how small town stuff is. If it isn't in somebody's garage in a shoebox, it isn't anywhere. I called Mason, who moved away but understands Fairview and the Marrow. "Oh yeah," he said, "the Angel Pit. Remember when we were teenagers and Tyler dared you to lie down in it?" "That wasn't the angel," I said automatically. "That was over by the old sycamores." "No, man. It was the angel. We put pennies on your eyes and told you to wait for the ferry. You popped up like a trout." He laughed. "You were mad." "I don't remember that," I said. But a cold feeling slid across my scalp like someone parting my hair. "You coming up this weekend? Danny's here." "I'll swing by Sunday," he said. "We'll all catch up. You can show me your hole." "Don't call it that." Saturday night, Danny and I ate at Brewer's. The place was crowded with the usual. High school kids in hoodies, men in hunting caps, a couple of nurses from the clinic. On the TV above the bar, a college game flickered. At the booth behind us, 2 old ladies were arguing whether the angel's head was tilted more than it used to be. "It's erosion," one said. "Everything leans." "Rock doesn't lean," the other said. "It breaks." Danny rolled her eyes at me. "See? This is why we left. When the rain let up, we swung by the cemetery. The road up to Bramble Hill was slick, and the headlights made the angel glow like it had swallowed a flashlight. Danny hugged her arms. "Quick," she said. "I don't want to—" She didn't finish. We waited. The engine ticked. The ring around the statue had deepened. The little rope Earl strung up was still there, but the two stakes nearest the angel were tilted in. There were flowers, sodden. There were stones with names in Sharpie that had bled in the rain. There was a metal dog tag on a chain, half buried. I don't know why I saw it. Maybe because the chain caught a drop of light and flashed. I stepped over the rope and crouched. Danny hissed, "Don't." But she didn't stop me. I hooked the chain with my finger and pulled. Wet grit sucked at it, then let go with a soft, fleshy sound I felt in my teeth. The tag had a number stamped on it, 12, and part of a name. Ginn. The rest was ground scrape smooth. "Put it back," Danny said. "God. It's just a—" I trailed off because holding it made me feel like I was standing next to a bonfire. Heat that wasn't heat. My palm tingled. The air smelled like damp smoke again, stronger now, and under it something sweet like burnt sugar. "Put it back," she repeated, voice thin. I did. The chain slid away like it was relieved. We got home and didn't talk about it. We're grown-ups. That's what we do. Sunday morning, Mason came by. He slapped my shoulder, hugged Danny, sniffed the air of our old living room like he expected to smell pizza and cheap beer. "You guys look terrible," he said, which was his way of saying, "I missed you." We drove him up the hill. The sky had turned that sharp blue you get after a rain. The angel's face was definitely weirder. Maybe it was the shadows. The mouth looked like it had been carved half open. Not a smile, not a grimace. Just caught in a word. Mason jogged, ahead, boots slipping. "Dude," he called over his shoulder. "Do you remember the pennies thing? I swear it was here. We dared you to lie down in the circle and hold still for 100 seconds. You got to like 80 and then you came up." "Clawing, untumbling, stop," I said because his voice was buzzing behind my eyes. "Romantic," Danny said. "Boys are gross." Earl's truck was parked crooked by the shed. He came up slow. "Don't go inside the rope," he said to Mason, not looking at me. "I'm tired of hauling people out." Mason raised his hands in surrender. "Just visiting. The angel." "Angel don't visit back," Earl said. "What's under it?" I asked again. He stared at the statue like he was trying to outstare it. "You seen those old bakery bags? The ones that leak flour? You can roll the tops, you can tape them, but if you hit them just so, a breath comes out and you got powder everywhere. It's like that." "Powder?" "Fill," he said. "The town dumped a lot of fill there in '79. That's not a secret." "What kind of fill?" Earl's jaw tightened. "Soil. Gravel. Things that look like soil and gravel. It's the top of a hill. Wind does a number. Rain too." Mason wasn't listening. He'd already unhooked the loop of rope and was balancing on the little concrete lip where the angel's pedestal met the ground, grinning like we were still 15. "What did I just say?" Earl snapped. "1 foot," Mason said. "I'm not—" The earth gave under him like someone exhaled. His boot slid. He pinwheeled, caught the angel's base with one hand, and swore. I grabbed his jacket and yanked. Something grabbed too, at the edge of my vision, a whole plane of ground that looked solid suddenly slumping like memory foam. It made a sound like wet paper tearing. Mason lurched toward me. The rope bit my wrist. Danny reached us and took his other arm. We pulled him onto the road, and the place where his foot had sunk kept slowly, gently caving in. We stood there breathing hard. Earl spat into the grass. "You all done?" he asked, like maybe we'd be going for round 2. Mason laughed, shaky. "That was weird." "Tomorrow it'll look flatter," Earl said. "Don't mean it is." We left. On the way down the hill, Mason said, "It was warm." "What?" "Where my foot went in. Warm like, a compost pile. You ever stick your hand in one, heat from inside?" "Shut up," Danny said, but her voice didn't have power. "We cooked dinner at Mom's because that's what you do when you're scared. You give your hand something to hold. After Mason went home, I tried to sleep and couldn't. Around midnight, when the house was quiet and you could hear the big trucks on the highway 3 miles off, I got in my car and drove to the cemetery by myself. Stupid, I know. I didn't bring a flashlight. I didn't bring sense. I parked at the bottom and walked up so my headlights wouldn't make everything look more haunted than it already did. The moon was thin and low. The angel looked bigger at night, all that white catching any light it could like a reflector vest. I stopped at the rope. The dip around the statue was dark, darker than the grass. The smell was there, wet smoke, but less. The wind had picked up. I stood for maybe a minute, maybe 5. Then I heard it. A child cough. Not cute, not fake. The kind that hurts, a dry bark. It was so out of place it didn't occur to me to be afraid at first. Maybe someone was up there. With me, hello? I said. There was another cough. Behind me or in front of me, I couldn't tell. It seemed to come from my own chest. I reached into my pocket for my phone to use as a light and felt something gritty. I pulled it out. My fingers were dusted gray. I didn't go inside the rope. I'm not the hero of this story. I'm the one who had enough sense to be a coward. I turned around and walked back to the car and drove home with my lips pressed so tight they hurt. In the morning, there was gray on the bath mat where I'd stepped out of the shower. I wiped it with a damp towel. The towel turned streaked like charcoal drawings. Danny had an early meeting with the realtor, so I went back to the library to find Ms. Keene. "Who is number 12? I asked when she looked up. "On a dog tag. At the Angel." She pursed her lips. "We don't have records for everything." "Do we have records for that?" She sighed. "There was a fire," she said. "By the factory. I was a child. They never said much. There were workers who lived in the boarding house behind it, men who didn't have anyone to claim them. The ladies' auxiliary set up a fund. It was handled. The cemetery took care." "Handled how?" "It was July," she said. "The ground was hard as iron. The town had a contract with a company that burned what needed burning." I swallowed. The room felt smaller. "The Angel was put up long before," she added, almost defensively. "The ladies had raised money. For years. It wasn't about the fire. But the fill," I said. "In 79. She didn't answer. "Did they put it there?" I asked. "Under the Angel?" Ms. Keene pushed the ledger away like it was hot. "It's not my job to make you feel better about whatever happened before you were old enough to ruin anything. You asked for facts. Here's one. The Angel has stood longer than I have." Another. "The ground is not solid even when it looks it." Another. "People who go up there to prove something usually prove that gravity still works. Be careful." I called Mason. He said, "Let's fix it." Which is his answer to everything, and the reason I've always loved him like a brother and always wanted to punch him. We can bring bags of gravel, we can shore it up. People fall in soft spots, that's how you get broken ankles. Earl's one guy, let's help. Earl doesn't want help. "Tough," he said. "Bring work gloves." It was dumb. It was decent. It was something to do. We went to the hardware store, bought 12 50-pound bags of pea gravel, borrowed a wheelbarrow, and drove up the hill in Mason's truck. Late afternoon light striped the grass. Earl was nowhere in sight. The rope around the statue hung slack. We stood and listened a second. The place had a sound. Wind through oak leaves, a truck downshifting far away, the tiny rattle of gravel in the truck bed when Mason's elbow bumped a bag. Then we started unloading. We sliced the first 2 bags and poured them gently into the dip, spreading the stones with our boots like smoothing icing. The gravel made a little hiss as it slid, like a big animal inhaling. On the 3rd bag, I felt it. Not sinking, not yet. A vibration through the soles of my boots. Like standing on a bridge when a semi goes over. "You feel that?" I asked. Mason cocked his head. "Wind," he said. There was no wind. We kept going. Bag 4, bag 5. The dip didn't fill, it seemed to drink. If we spread it in one spot, it vanished. If we tried to heap it, the heap went down slow, the way a pile of sugar melts when you pour water on it. "It's going under," Mason said, fascinated. Look at that. He crouched and stuck his fingers in. He yanked them back, shaking. Ow. Hot? Yeah, he said, surprised. How? Compost pile, I said, and we looked at each other like idiots for saying the same thing. As yesterday. We opened bag 6. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. I was sweating. The smell was back, thick enough to taste. It coated my tongue. Damp smoke and something else. Hair. I didn't want to know, but I knew. Burned hair? Okay, Mason said. Maybe we take a break? 2 more bags, I said, because the stupidest part of my brain wanted to win, to prove we could make a dent in something that did not care about dents. 2 more and we stop, he agreed. We opened 7 and 8 and the ground moved. I know how that sounds, but there isn't a better word. 1 second it was there. Dirt and gravel and rain-sunk flowers. The next, the whole thing flexed with a motion you feel more than see. Like when you watch someone breathe under a blanket. A slow, incoming breath, and the gravel we'd just poured flowed inward, like being drawn across a tilted table. Mason grabbed my arm. Okay, he said, but his voice had gone soft. Okay. Something at the edge of the dip collapsed. Not a lot, a foot maybe. The angel's pedestal tilted a millimeter, enough to see, enough to make your stomach drop. And then the cough came again. Not one. Several. Dry, hacking, awful. And this time there were words with it. Not spoken out, loud. Not the way you hear someone at a grocery store. More like when you're about to fall asleep and your own brain says your name. A whisper, right under my thoughts. Say them. Say what? I gasped. Do you hear that? Mason was backing, up, eyes fixed on the dip. His boots crushed pedals. His hands were gray. Names, I said, and I don't know how I knew. They want names. The angel's mouth, in that bad shadowed way, seemed more open now, like it was about to devour a word. I took a breath like jumping into cold water. Number 12, I said, and I meant to say it steady, but it came out like a question. Jin. I didn't know the rest. G, I don't know. The coughs overlapped. The air thinned. I could taste the dust. It was in my teeth, between my molars and my gums, gritty as ground bone. Mason said, "Stop." But I was already scrambling in the dip's edge, hands raking through gravel like a dog through a blanket. I found the chain by touch, a thin, hard snake. I pulled. It resisted and then gave way, and I had the tag in my hand, and when I rubbed it with my thumb, the letters showed a little, just enough. Ginger. Ginger, I said. Ginger. Saying, it felt like blowing on a coal and seeing orange. I said it again. Ginger. The ground didn't stop moving, but the motion shifted. The breath out came. The pile settled a little flatter. The smell for a second softened to something almost good. Like someone's kitchen at Christmas if you could forget what was burning. Okay, Mason said, shaking. Enough. We go. We took 2 steps back and the ground breathed in again, and this time it caught Mason's right boot. It wasn't dramatic. He didn't scream and get dragged into hell. His foot slid in up to the ankle with a slurp, and the gravel around it avalanched downward as if his weight had tipped a hidden bin. He grabbed for me and I grabbed back, and our hands slipped on ash that wasn't there a second before. And then he slipped to mid-calf. He didn't shout a word. It was a sound I've never heard from him before or since. A high, scared, helpless noise, like when a kid realizes they're about to fall and no adult can catch them in time. I went to my knees in the gravel and got both hands under his armpits and pulled. The earth didn't want to give him back. For a second I felt something like hands on my wrists, small ones, gritty, and then Mason came loose with a suction pop I felt in my lungs. We fell backwards. The dog tag jerked out of my other hand and vanished. The ground settled like a beast tucking its chin. Then everything went quiet. Not normal quiet. The kind where a room holds its breath waiting to see if you're going to say thank you. Okay, Mason panted. Okay, He said it like if he had the right number of OKs, we'd get to keep walking and not sink anymore. We didn't go to the hospital. What would we say? Hi, we were feeding gravel to an angel, and the dirt bit my friend. We went to my mom's house. I hosed Mason's leg off in the yard, and his skin had this gray film that didn't wash away right. My foot's hot, he said, and it was. I could feel the heat through the thin stream of water, like it's sunburned from the inside. We sat on the back steps and didn't talk for a long time. When we did, it was about everything except what needed saying. Bills, Danny's wedding, the weather. When he left, he hugged me hard and whispered, "Do not go up there alone again," into my ear like it was between us and anyone else would try to take it from us. Danny found the gravel bags in the truck and asked me what we did. I told her most of it, not all. She got quiet. "I looked up the boarding house fire," she said finally. "There's nothing, like it didn't happen. But I called Pastor Lila. She said there was an accident in 79, but it wasn't the boarding house, it was the old crematory. They had to do a lot at once. She didn't say what, she said they made it right." "Right how?" "She didn't say." Danny frowned. "She asked if we'd seen any residue." "Residue," I repeated, like she was reading off a script. That night I woke coughing, not the way you wake from a cold, with your throat raw. This was like choking on a word that wouldn't come out. I sat up coughing, and gray puffed in the thin line of moon from the blinds. I stumbled to the sink and spat, and the spit was gray too, and I cried, not loudly, just mad and tired. I rinsed and it didn't stop. In the morning, Earl was on the porch railing when I opened the door, as if he'd been there all night. He looked at my face and didn't say hello. "You went?" he said. "I'm sorry." He shook his head. "You either get it or you don't. It likes names. That's the only..." He rubbed his chin as if searching for smoother words, and gave up. "Once a year after the last frost, I go up there with a book. The ladies wrote a list. It's not official, it's what people remembered. I read the list. It keeps it from taking more than it can swallow." "Can I see the list?" Early looked away toward the oak tree. "You saw number 12. "Ginger," I said, and the word warmed the air between us the way saying her name had at the pit. He nodded. "Some of them are just numbers. Some have first names. Some have street names. The carriage man. The girl in blue. Doc's cousin. You read who you can. It's not God, what's under there. But it's not empty." "No," I said. "It's not." "Don't read more than you know," he added. "Don't make things up, it doesn't like lies." We went up together. The morning was bright and ordinary, birds talking to each other, cars passing far off. The angel looked as it always had if you didn't look too long. The dip was flatter, like Earl said, as if someone had run a hand over a wrinkled bedsheet. He pulled a battered notebook from his jacket and flipped to a page with handwriting like burned sticks. He didn't hand me the book. He read. 1, he said. Ruthie. 2, Harmon. 3, the kid who fixed screens. He read 20 names. Some made the hair on my arms lift. Some were just sounds. When he got to 12, he said it the way you say a prayer before you turn a key in an engine that might not start. Ginger. And the air pushed against my chest and let go. Earl shut the notebook and tucked it away. That's enough, he said. For now. Who wrote those, I asked. People who were there, he said. People who were left. People who wanted the ground to stop eating. Does it? Not for long. We stood a while. I almost asked if the angel's mouth always looked like that. I didn't. I think I can live without that answer. Life went back to being almost normal. We sold Mom's house. Danny went back to the city and called me twice a day for a week, then once, then texted emojis. Mason said his leg felt fine mostly. He coughed for a while, then didn't. I kept waking at odd hours thinking I heard someone on the porch, only to open the door to the smell of rain on old stone. I don't go to Bramble Hill at night anymore. I go in daylight when the angel is for everyone. Sometimes there are kids and they put quarters down, and when I see that, I switch them for stones because it seems wrong to leave metal that disappears. Sometimes I bring a bag of gravel and pour a little and watch it vanish and say a name, any name I'm sure of. There aren't enough. There will never be enough. But it settles something small inside me. A few times I've found things on my doormat in the morning that shouldn't be there, because I don't keep ash in my house and I didn't walk through any. A dirty ribbon. A charred corner of a photograph with somebody's shoulder in a suit. Once a coin that had been in a fire. You could see where the copper showed through in a blister. I don't keep them. I take them up to the angel and put them on that thin concrete lip and step back until I'm outside the rope. If you go up there, don't be an idiot. Don't take what isn't yours. Don't pretend you can fill a thing that's been empty longer than you've been alive. If you have a name and you're sure of it, you can say it. If you don't, hush. Listen. The ground will breathe and you'll feel it in your kneecaps. You'll smell smoke in your hair when you get home, even if you didn't stand near any. You might cough, and what you cough out might be gray, and you'll tell yourself it's dust from a box in your attic or the roads being salted or whatever you need to believe to sleep. The last time I went, the sky was the color of dirty dishwater, and the wind had that edge that says the season's about to change. I stood at the rope and looked at the angel, and got the stupid idea in my head that the wing on the right had an extra chip it didn't used to, a bite taken out of the feathers. Edge like a mouse nibbled it. I told myself I was being a child. I put a stone down. I said a name. The ground lifted and dropped, so subtle I could almost pretend it hadn't, if not for the fact that the stone was gone. I turned to go. Behind me, where the rope sagged, a little whisper moved the grass the way a cat does when it sneaks by your legs. It wasn't wind, it wasn't a person. It was that breath again, in and out like a sleeping body you can't see. I didn't turn around. I kept walking. I know the sound of something that won't be finished in my lifetime. There are a lot of words like that. Sorry, please stay. Names said out loud to empty air. When I got back to my car, there was a film on the windshield, a dusty bloom like you get when your houseplants are thirsty. Someone had traced 4 lines across it with a finger. 2 curves that could be wings maybe, or just a person wiping a place to see. I stood there looking at that shape, and for reasons I refused to examine, I felt steadier than I had in months. Drove home slow. I didn't look in the rear view. I took the long way, past the clinic and the school and Brewers, where the TV was playing something nobody watched. I coughed once in the kitchen, and what came up was almost clear. Not quite. Enough to remember. Enough to mean there was still something to say. Kids dared each other to press their ears to the dirt out by Millstone. Most just heard silence. A few heard whispers. And one unlucky kid claimed the ground screamed until his eardrums bled. That's the version we told in the parking lot behind. The Sonic, leaning on hot hoods and sipping cherry limeades we didn't pay for. It sounded dumb in daylight. By night it worked its way under your skin. Millstone Cemetery sits down a cracked county road that used to be the main way to the old sawmill before the company pulled out. The gate is a sagging chain link with a crooked sign someone hand-painted white over rust. Half the graves are those thin, tilting stones people bought when money was short, and the other half are newer polished granite with little vases built in. It's not a famous cemetery. It's just the place folks from the eastern edge of town go when they die. If there's anything special about it, it's a low place in the ground toward the back where the dirt sinks a little after rain. They call that corner the flat. I moved away after high school like everyone swore they would and mostly didn't. College in Dallas, job offers that felt like someone else's life. When my mom's knee went bad last fall and she needed help getting around, I took leave and came home for a month. That's how I ended up back at Sonic. Back with the same 2 people who'd carried me through more nights than I deserved. Casey and Maya. Casey is the friend who looks like trouble, but mostly just collects it. He's got a scar on his eyebrow, from falling off a 4-wheeler and a voice that makes everything sound like a dare. Maya used to be the shy girl who drew on her shoes in class. Now she works nights at the hospital and still draws on things, only now it's charts and she's not shy when it counts. We're not kids anymore, but you get the 3 of us together, and the old gravity pulls. We were talking about Dumbtown, legends and how none of them ever changes. Someone mentioned millstone. I said, that screaming dirt thing was just the wind. Maya shook her head. Tyler Hill went out there sophomore year. He came back with blood on his collar. He didn't go to football practice for 2 weeks. Casey grinned. You saying we should check? For science. I rolled my eyes. But the truth is, after a week of helping my mom up the stairs and listening to the same 6 local radio commercials, I wanted to do something that felt like the version of me who used to cut across the rail yard instead of going around. Fine, I said, but I'm not putting my ear on any grave. Not the graves, Casey said. The flat. That's where it happens. We waited for a night with no rain, because after the last storm, the road out there had swallowed. A minivan to the axles. The forecast said clear, a thin moon. We met at the gas station on FM 225 and grabbed flashlights and bug spray and a couple bottles of water. Maya brought a cheap field recorder she uses for interviews with patients' families when they consent. I want to see if it picks anything up we don't hear, she said, half joking, half serious. Millstone at night doesn't look like the place you visited for funerals. The trees hold on to the dark. The air smells like wet pine needles and iron. We parked by the ditch and climbed over where the chain link has bowed. The gravel path is rutted, so you put your feet where the ruts aren't and hope you don't twist an ankle. Names in our light slid by. Harper, Blackwell, Rojas. A white stone angel missing both hands. A little fenced square with a plastic pinwheel that spun in the breeze you couldn't feel. Whispers, Casey said, shining his light under his own chin like a camp counselor. Children's voices. Bring me the... Maya smacked his arm. Stop it. We found the flat easy. Even in low light you can see how the ground just smooths out. It's not a lawn, it's still clay and sand and crabgrass, but there's a kind of dish, a shallow bowl like the earth size there after rain. A thin orange flag was stuck off to the side like someone had marked it for utility work and forgotten. I hate that, Maya said. One flag. Like somebody knew something and just gave up. She clicked the recorder on and set it on a little tripod in the center of the dish. We stood around not saying anything, like we were at a weird graveside service. Off in the pines, a train blew its horn. Somewhere closer, a cricket chirped wrong like a toy with a dying battery. Okay, Casey said. Who's first? I still say this is stupid, I said, but I lowered myself down anyway. The ground was warm from the day. That surprised me. I put my palm down flat and felt the tiny grit of broken shell and sand. My heart was doing that thing where it lurches a little too fast. I turned my head like I'd watched other kids do, back when we were 12, put my ear to the dirt and held still. I heard exactly what you'd expect at first. My own breath in my cheekbone, the rustle of grass, the tiny roar in your head that's just blood doing its job. I was ready to sit up and tell them I heard nothing. Then something steadied in that roar, like a tone resolved, a low note sitting under everything else. Do you hear it? Maya whispered. Shh, Casey said. Let him listen. The longer I kept my ear there, the more the low note felt less like a sound and more like a weight, like when someone on the next floor slams a door and it comes up through your bed frame. It wasn't constant either. It rose like breath, held, dropped, rose again. If you think I'm trying to write it poetic, I'm not. I'm telling you it was breath. I sat up too fast and got that sparkly feeling in my vision. It's just wind in a pipe, I said, except there was no wind and no pipe. Maya went next. She laid flat, cheek to dirt, eyes closed like she was praying. A minute passed. Another. I was about to make a joke when she flinched and scrambled, backward on her elbows. What? I said. There's talking, she said. Under it. Like far. Not a word, just... She shook her head. You do it, Casey. He lowered down and took forever because he's dramatic. Then he jerked and said, nope, and stood so quick his light spun off into the trees. He put his fingers to his ear. It popped, he said. Like pressure. We stood there, all 3 of us, and nobody laughed. The train horn blew again, 3 long, 2 short. Maya checked the recorder just to be doing something. It's getting a signal, she said. Levels are normal. I'll play it later when we're not in a graveyard. We were about to call it when another light hit us. For a second I thought it was a cop, but it was just one of those square, LED work lights bungeed to the front of an old green John Deere. The tractor chugged closer and a man I recognized cut the engine. "Evenin'," he said. "Cemetery's closed." "Sorry, Mr. Collier," I said. He'd been the groundskeeper here since we were little. Men in town wear work years on their faces like rings in a tree. Collier had a whole forest. He squinted at us for a second longer, and then looked at the flat. "You put your heads down there," he said. "Not a question. We were just—" Casey started. "Don't," Mr. Collier said. "That's not for you." He reached into the small trailer he was towing and hauled out a 50-pound bag of garden lime like it was a pillow. He stabbed it with a knife and walked along the rim of the dish, sifting white dust in a wide circle. "What's the lime for?" I asked. "Smell," he said. "And damp. And because it's what my daddy did." Maya glanced at me. "Does it actually do anything for—" She caught herself before she said screams. "For whatever people say." He looked at her longer than he needed to. "You're Medrano's girl, aren't you? Nurse." "Yes, sir," she said. "Then you know some things ain't for fixing, just for keeping where they belong." He shouldered the bag and headed back toward his tractor. "Go on home," he said without looking at us. "Next rain, the flat's going to sink another inch. It's been doing that since before I was born. That's all it is." He drove off, without checking if we listened. We stood there and watched the lime cloud settle into the grass like frost. "Okay," Casey said softly. "That was weird." "It's subsidence," I said, grasping at science like a floating door. "There's probably an old culvert under here from the mill days. Wind blows, pressure changes, things resonate. Bodies do weird stuff. Ears are tubes. Pareidolia." Maya smiled a little. "You practiced that speech?" "I watched a lot of explainer videos alone in Dallas," I said. We left. On the way back to the car, I saw something bright half buried in the dirt off to the side. At first I thought it was a piece of foil, the kind from flowers. It wasn't. It was a marble chip off somebody's headstone, the edge smooth and weathered, the broken face rough with quartz. It was the shape of an ear, or maybe it only looked that way because of what we'd just done. I pocketed it without telling the others. It seemed like a harmless souvenir at the time. Maya texted me the audio. The next day, she'd imported it into this program that shows waves as colors. "Just so you see I'm not making it up," she wrote. The file looked like a field at night sounds like. Wind, insect hiss, our shoes. But under that, there were bands of sound, at steady intervals you don't normally get outside of something made. Not music exactly, the kind of spacing a pipe organ makes. The weird thing wasn't that there were low notes. The weird thing was the way the low notes bent every so often, like something big breathed and the space itself changed. Maya jerked her head up too fast and smacked into my chin. Casey shouted and scrambled backward. His right hand went down to push himself up and disappeared to the wrist as the soil sloughed. He yelped, more angry than hurt, and I grabbed his forearm and hauled. The ground gave a little and let him go, like fingers releasing a sleeve. His hand was coated in wet clay up past the watchband. "Ow," he said, shocked. "My ear." He touched the side of his head, and his fingers came away dark. It wasn't much blood, just the kind you get when a little vessel bursts, but the sight of it tilted my stomach. "Up," I said. "Up, up, up." We staggered to the rim. The crack kept running, a bright seam where the lime collapsed into dust. The rush of air changed direction in a way you can't see but your body knows. The pitch slid down a half step, then another, then up so fast I thought something inside me would shake loose. The recorder on the tripod, forgotten until that moment, tipped toward the opening like the breath was tugging it. Maya grabbed it by the leg without taking her eyes off the split. A beam hit us, that hard, flat light again. Mr. Collier's tractor roared up like we'd called it. "Back!" he shouted. He didn't sound surprised. He sounded tired and scared, and like somebody who'd rehearsed this. He swung off the seat before the engine stopped and dragged a pallet off the trailer. "Get off the flat." We didn't argue. He slid the pallet toward the split, then another behind it like he was laying down stepping stones. "You pull it in with your ears," he said. Not to us, but to the air. Everyone always does. Hush. The last word wasn't at us either. He reached for the lime bag, realized it was too slow, and instead yanked open a cooler. He scooped out plastic jugs of water, milk jugs, old antifreeze jugs scrubbed clean, whatever he had, and upended them at the crack. The quick flood made the lime clump. The pitch wavered, then fell like someone took their mouth off a bottle. The breath stuttered, held, slowed. For a moment, just the bugs and our ragged breathing and the distant highway. Then the ground under. The pallet settled with a tired exhale. The seam stopped widening. Nobody spoke. Mr. Collier wiped his mouth with the back of his arm. In the half-light, he looked like a statue knocked down in a storm and put back up crooked. "You all right?" he asked finally. Casey nodded and winced and nodded again. Maya had the recorder clutched like a baby bird. "What is it?" I said. "What are we hearing?" He looked down at the crack, now a damp line with clotted white. "You think there's just dirt under dirt," he said. "That's a pretty story. This whole end of the cemetery sits over an old canal they cut from the creek to the mill pond in 1911, give or take. And over that is another mess of roots and voids and pockets from old trees and gophers and what have you. The canal collapsed and left ribs of clay. When the weather hits right and the water down there tries to equalize, all those ribs sing. The ground has its own throat. Been doing it since before my granddaddy was caretaker. Mostly it's low. Sometimes it finds a shape you recognize. Sometimes it finds you." "That's not an answer," Casey said. He meant it angry, but it came out small. "It's the only one I've got," Collier said. "Don't come back at night, you hear me?" We drove home with the windows down. None of us talked. The screaming, I don't know what else to call it, had left a feeling in my bones like I'd been too close to a speaker at a show. I washed the mud off Casey's hand in my mom's sink while he sat at the table and stared at nothing. Maya wrapped gauze around his ear with the kind of steady calm you practice and earn. She put the recorder on the counter and said, "We shouldn't listen now." We didn't. I didn't sleep. Around 3 in the morning, the house did that deep night hush that makes you hear your own eyelids. I lay there and waited for the hum. It didn't come. I almost laughed, relieved, and then realized I could feel something through the mattress. Not a sound. A rise and fall, slow, like when you fall asleep in a car and dream you are still moving. I sat up and it stopped. I put my hand flat on the bed, and it started again. I told myself I was feeling my heartbeat rebounding. I told myself that until the first light came through the cheap blinds and my body finally decided to crash. We tried to go on like normal. Casey pretended nothing shook him. Maya kept texting about patient charts and the little things that keep nurses alive. I helped my mom get to the doctor and picked up her prescriptions and watched a couple episodes of a show where a city guy moves to a farm and learns a lesson each week. None of it did anything to shake the feeling that when I walked, the floor walked back. On the third day, Maya brought over the audio. "I waited like I said I would," she told me on the porch. "But I can't stand not knowing what's on it." We played it on my laptop, just the 3 of us at the kitchen table, where we'd eaten birthday cake and cried after breakups. The early minutes were what we remembered. Our dumb whispers, the slow, low notes that made us shift in our chairs without meaning to. Then the pitch climbed, and my speakers rattled, even though the volume wasn't up. You can hear Casey say, "Ow," quiet like he's in church. You can hear the tractor in the distance before the light hits us. Somewhere between those two things, there's a smear of sound the program shows as a bright thread. Maya froze it, backed it up, played it 3 times. The shape of it is a syllable and a half. "If you make me write down what I think it sounds like, I'll hate myself," Maya said. "Don't," Casey said. We sat with that for a while. Then we listened to the end. After the crack closes and the hum falls, There's a breath of silence I'd swear is longer than the real time around. And then the recorder picks up this small sound, so quiet you could mistake it for a hand brushing cloth. I turned the volume up and it came through. A scrape, 2 beats, another scrape. It took me a second to realize what it was. It's that sound sand makes when it runs through your fingers onto a hard surface. I turned it off right there, Maya said. I don't remember doing that. But that's the end. After that, things didn't get dramatic. No sinkholes swallowed the town. No bones surfaced in the night. The county did come out with a crew and orange netting and put up a taller sign. They staked the flat like a construction site and dumped more lime and told the paper there was nothing to worry about except natural ground settling. People brought plastic flowers like usual and came on Sundays in their best, and nobody dwelled. That's how it goes. Not because people don't feel, but because you can't live with your ear to the earth all the time. We all tried to step away. Casey laughed about his ghost and showed off the tiny scar in his ear. Maya changed shifts. I drove back to Dallas when my leave ran out and got to my apartment and stood in the doorway like I'd broken into a stranger's life. Here's the part I didn't tell them, and I'm only telling you because I don't know what else to do with it. A week after I left, I was lying on my own bed in Dallas, miles from any pine or red clay, and I woke up to the hum again. It's fainter here, like a memory your body keeps in a pocket. I pressed my palm to the mattress. Rise, hold, drop. I rolled over and pushed my ear into the pillow because I wanted to prove to myself it was in my head, and the pitch slid up just a hair at the exact moment my ear sealed against the foam, like there was an answer on the other side of the fabric, just waiting for a mouth to listen with. The marble ear chip sits on my dresser. I don't know why I haven't thrown it away. Some nights I pick it up and it's cool. Some nights it's warmer than the room in a way that doesn't make sense. I told myself to leave it alone. I told myself to text Mr. Collier and ask him for history records or maps of the old canal. Then I didn't text him. I did something worse, which is nothing. Last Friday around 2 I heard the little sound from the recording in my apartment. Scrape, 2 beats, scrape. I sat up and waited for the scream. It didn't come. That almost made it worse. I walked into the living room, and the floor under. My feet felt like it had shifted half a grain, like something exhaled in the walls. I stood there with my mouth open, and only then realized I'd been holding my breath, like I was trying not to give the air ideas. If you need a tidy ending, I don't have one. I'm writing this because if you're from where I'm from, someone will dare you to go out to Millstone. They'll tell you the ground screams. You'll say it's wind. You'll go with your friends so you can laugh about it later. Maybe you'll hear nothing. Maybe you'll hear the breath and walk away a little lighter because you got to feel the earth doing a thing nobody ever told you it does. Maybe you'll put your ear down and it'll find the exact shape of your name and try it on like a song. If you go, don't take anything. Don't bring anything home that looks like an ear. Don't think you can keep it where it belongs with a ring of chalk or a cooler full of water. Don't listen too long. People say the kid with the bleeding ears moved away and became a missionary or a felon or a ghost. People say he made it up to get attention. The only part of his story that matters is the part nobody wrote down because they didn't hear it. When he got home and put his head on his pillow, he clamped his hands over his ears to shut the sound out, and that's when he learned it wasn't coming from outside. It's a hard thing to admit, that the ground knows your shape now, that it has lungs and a voice, and once in a while, when the weather hits just right and the pressure between what's above and what's below can't settle by itself, it calls to whoever once listened. I'm not telling you this because I want you to be scared of a cemetery. I'm telling you because last night in my apartment 3 hours away at 12:37 a.m., the breath under my mattress held too long and then forced itself out in a thin, high whine. The sound was so thin I could have pretended it was a truck's brakes or a pipe in the wall. But I know a mouth when I hear one, and I know when it has learned your name. The caretaker at Pine Hollow never spoke much, just nodded and jingled the iron ring of keys on his belt. But after he died, folks swore they still heard those keys rattling at night, unlocking graves that should have stayed sealed. I wasn't the kind of person who chased ghost stories. I stocked shelves at night and helped my aunt on weekends, and that's about as exciting as my life got. Pine Hollow Cemetery sat on the edge of our town like an old scar. Black wrought iron fence, cedar trees leaning in, gravel lanes with names like Angel Row and Oak Lane. I used to cut across it when I was running late, which sounds dumb, but during the day it felt less like a graveyard and more like a quiet park with too many dates carved into stone. The caretaker, Mr. Ward, had a cabin behind the maintenance shed. He lived alone, walked with a slight limp, and wore the same canvas jacket year-round. Everyone called him Keys behind his back because of that heavy iron ring. He had keys for everything: mausoleums, tool cages, old gates people forgot. Even a glass display case in the chapel that held antique locks from the 1800s. If you asked him anything, he'd usually just nod, jingle the ring once, and point. It sounds rude, but it wasn't. The man just didn't talk. He died in late September. They said it was his heart. One morning he didn't unchain the main gate on time, and when the florist, Darlene, got there with a bucket of mums, she found him on the chapel pew with his head bowed like he'd fallen asleep during a prayer. The ring of keys was still on, his belt. That detail is why the story started. Because in the days after his funeral, those keys kept showing up in the wrong places. My best friend, Nate, swore he heard them in the middle of the night when he cut through Pine Hollow after a late shift. He said it was a distinct sound, iron on iron, that dry clink you don't mistake for wind. Then Mrs. Clemens, who walks her dog along the fence every morning, found the side service gate standing open at dawn, padlock hanging from the post, with the shackle popped. The lock wasn't broken. It had been unlocked somehow, and the key was nowhere. A week later, I picked up a few maintenance shifts because the city hadn't hired a new caretaker yet and needed someone to lock up at dusk. I needed the money, and besides, I told myself it would be easy. Check the gates, sweep the chapel, throw the chain on the maintenance shed. Pine Hollow closes at 7. I'd be out by 7:10. The first night I took the little white maintenance cart, a clipboard map, and a flashlight that was stronger in my imagination than in reality. There's a low hum to cemeteries after sunset, like the ground still holds the day's heat and lets it out as a kind of breath. I was halfway down Oak Lane when I heard it, a short rattle, metallic, close enough that I stopped and snapped the flashlight toward the hedges. "Nate?" I called, which made no sense. He was at work. The beam lit up cedar needles and a drip of sap. No movement. The sound didn't repeat. I told myself it was the chain on the basket of the cart tapping against the frame. I bungee corded it, just in case, and kept going. Pine Hollow's chapel is small, white wood, a steeple sharp enough to poke a cloud. Inside, it always smells like wax and old paper. The glass display case of antique locks sits by the door, a little town history corner. I was supposed to dust the top and check that it was latched. When I lifted the cloth to swipe over it, my flashlight glared back at me in the glass. For a second, I thought I saw someone else's face behind mine. Tired eyes, gray stubble. But that's what low light does to a person. The latch was secure. I turned to leave, and that's when I saw them. On the pew where Mr. Ward had been found, 3 smudges of rust on the wood, oval-shaped like something heavy had rested there. Not blood. Rust. I touched one without thinking. It left a faint, orange streak on my fingertip that smelled like wet pennies. I locked the chapel, rolled the cart to the front gate, and made my rounds. The padlocks went down easy. The dusk sharpened into dark, and the noise of the highway a mile off settled into a constant wash. My breath fogged a little. When I finished, I parked the cart by the maintenance shed, hooked the chain, and went to fit the padlock. It wouldn't take. I tried the key again, slower. The shackle slid through the chain, but the cylinder turned like it was chewing grit. I angled my light and swore. Some idiot had jammed a tiny shard of metal into the lock. It looked like the broken tooth of a key. I fished out my pocket knife and tried to pry it loose. No luck. I cursed again, softer now. I'd just deal with it tomorrow. That's when the cart bell chimed. It's not really a bell. It's a hinge that squeaks when the weight shifts, like a bicycle bell muffled under a sweater. It rang once, then again. I swung my light around. The cart had rolled 6 inches on flat ground. The gravel under its wheels was drawn in 2 shallow arcs, like somebody had tugged it forward. The brake was set. I watched it for a full minute, nothing moved. And yet, while I stood there holding my breath, I heard keys. Not far, not close, just somewhere behind me, on the path between the shed and the back fence. Clink, pause, clink, clink. There's a kind of fear that doesn't explode, just spreads. It slides under your ribs and makes you feel hollow compared to the night pressing in. I told myself, raccoon, teenagers. Wind vibrated the chain on the gate. Anything but what it sounded like. I forced myself to do one last pass by the side service. Gate. It stood closed, chain threaded, padlock on. I tugged the chain with a little force just to reassure my brain. Solid. I told Pine Hollow goodnight out loud and walked to my car with the light still on. Nate called as I pulled away. You, done being brave? Don't start, I said. There were some weird smudges in the chapel. Rust, I think. Or grave sweat, he said, laughing. You hear the keys? I heard something metal. I didn't want to fuel him. It's probably loose hardware on the cart. You sound freaked. I'm fine. I wasn't. You working late? Till midnight. Swing by if you want to not sleep alone. Huh. He got serious. Hey, if you're going back there tomorrow, don't go alone. Call me. We'll do it together. Get you used to it. I don't need training wheels to close a gate. Sure, he said. And I don't need my dog to keep me from sleeping with the lights on. On my second night, I asked my aunt if she wanted to ride with me. She said no, like I'd asked her to go clubbing. So I texted Nate. He met me at the gate with a gas station coffee and a grin that said he expected it to be fun until it wasn't. We moved faster with 2 people. He took Angel Row, I took Oak. We met at the chapel, and I felt stupid for not wanting to go in first. The smell hit us as soon as I opened the door. Not wax this time, but oil. Used oil, like from an old machine or a chain too dry to run smooth. It was faint. It made the back of my tongue taste metallic. Nate wrinkled his nose. You smell that? Yeah. I lifted the cloth and checked the display latch. Still secure. The antique locks inside, big, fancy things with scrollwork and heavy keys, looked like paperweights from a castle. A thin thread of dust lay along the top edge of the glass, undisturbed except for, my light picked it out, 3 tiny arcs. Not scratches, not smudges from a rag. Tiny, perfect arcs like something had tapped the dust and made little crescents. I put my finger next to one and felt ridiculous measuring. They were the size of the teeth on a key. Let's just finish, Nate said. His voice had lost the grin. We locked the chapel, checked the main gate, circled past the small family mausoleums near the back. If you've never been near a mausoleum at night, there's a particular quiet to them, a box of stone, quiet that swallows sound and gives you back only your footsteps. I was about to tell Nate to stop breathing on my neck when his arm shot out and hit my chest. Look. He pointed at the Redding family mausoleum. The brass handle on the door hung vertical. It should have been horizontal, locked. The tiny keyhole below it, dark as an eye, seemed to look back. I checked that earlier, I said. I swear it was locked. Maybe you didn't pull hard enough. Maybe. Nate stepped up and pressed the handle. It didn't move. He tugged. The door, it stayed shut. Locked, he said. And even he sounded disappointed, like whatever we were avoiding would be easier to believe if the door swung open by itself. We turned back toward the cart and froze. The path we'd walked, a simple stretch of crushed granite, held our prints and then more. Not shoe prints. Not really. Like something narrow had rolled once across the path and left a shallow line that curved toward the lilies, then curved back, as if it had been dragged by someone lazy. That, wasn't there? Nate said. It's a cart track, I said. Cart's over there. It could have been from earlier. Where are you? I typed, thumbs clumsy. Front gate. Go to the chapel. I moved faster, cut across the section where the older stones lean like teeth and reached the chapel's porch. The door, which I had shut behind me, stood an inch open. The dark inside felt more like a crowd than an empty room. I pushed it with my foot and shined the light in. The key was gone from the pew. "Nate," I said out loud, because that's what you do when your brain needs the world to be normal. "This isn't funny. I'm at the chapel," his voice said, not from behind me but in my ear. He'd called. His breath was quick. "Door's open. Are you here?" "I'm on the porch." We walked in at the same time from opposite doors, me from the side porch, him from the front, and nearly knocked each other down. "Where is it?" he asked. I pointed at the pew. We stared at the empty spot like maybe the key would feel embarrassed and roll back. "Someone's in here," he said softly. We didn't say who we thought. We searched the tiny place anyway, the closet, the little office where the donation box sits, behind the organ. The air was colder by the organ, like the cold had a weight to it. Nate ran his light along the baseboards and stopped. "What?" I asked. He didn't answer. He crouched and put his face near the floor. There. He aimed the beam into the shadow under the pew across from the one we'd been watching. I expected dust bunnies and lost bulletins. What I saw was the thin brass tag. It lay on the floor as if dropped, a tiny rectangle with a hole at one end like a torn earlobe. I slid my fingers under and drew it out like it might bite. It shone dimly. It was blank. "Maybe the letters wore off," I said, "or they were never there." The display case clicked. It wasn't loud. The latch moved the fraction of an inch it needs to move to unlatch. We both turned the lights on it at the same time. The case door stood pinned by our beams. It hadn't swung open, but you could see. The latch wasn't engaged. The antique locks inside didn't move, but something else did. A shadow across the floor. No, not a shadow. An absence shaped like a ring with spokes. It moved past the display as if a person were crossing in front of it, invisible except for the part the light couldn't quite land on. You know that sensation when you think you're looking straight at something, but you're actually staring past it and only catching its edges? It was like that. A ring there and not there, drawing a set of small circles around itself in the air. Nate whispered, "Do you hear it?" At first I didn't. Then I did, quiet enough to doubt. But it was there, threading through the rain and our breath. Keys gently rattling as if someone were searching for the right one. We backed toward the porch without meaning to. The sound followed us only as far as the display case. Then it moved to our right toward the side door that led out to the path to the mausoleums. The latch lifted as if a patient hand raised it from below. The door side opened in a stripe of wet dark. Nate grabbed my sleeve. "We should go," he said, but he didn't pull. He was looking at the floor by the door, where a narrow line had appeared in the wet grit blown in by the rain. Not a shoe print, a single straight line that cut across the doorway and then curved toward the path, as if dragged by something swinging, slightly with each step. "Please," I said, to the empty room or to the rain or to someone I couldn't see. "Don't do this." The rattle of keys paused. The line in the grit continued, slow, like whoever held it had made up their mind. We followed. Not because we were brave, because the only way out was through. That's something people say. I think it's just how a body moves when the world narrows to a single thing happening and you can't stand in it anymore. The path to the Redding Mausoleum was a narrow one. The cedars made a tunnel, the rain sharper under them. We rounded the bend and my light swung across the door. The handle stood vertical. The keyhole yawned. The sound of keys grew louder. Not loud like a radio. Loud like a whisper at your ear. Close, and everywhere, hard to pinpoint. It came from the door. It came from the air just off the ground at knee height. It came from the space between us where nothing should have been. Nate reached for my arm again, and his fingers closed over skin, so cold it burned. Not my arm. I jumped. He snatched his hand back with a gasp and held it up to his own light. His fingertips were white with a thin sheen on them, like frost. He wiped them on his jeans and left dark, wet streaks that smelled like oil. "Okay," he said, voice small. Okay, we're done." The key stopped. Then, with the audacity of a person who believes the world is theirs if they can just find the right tooth, One key slid into the keyhole. I didn't see it. I felt it the way your stomach feels a bass note, pressure and certainty. The handle gave a fraction, then settled back, obeying a lock that didn't belong to it. The thing that held the keys didn't get mad. It got methodical. We heard them sort, a tiny clink, another, a pause. The sound came from the air at knee height, right in front of Nate, where his breath smoked in a tight little cloud. He made a sound that wasn't a word. He set his jaw. He didn't run. The third key turned. The handle fell horizontal. The door sighed inward 2 inches, wet stone sliding against wet stone. A thread of air came out that wasn't air from our time. It smelled like damp linen and earth, and something like preserved flowers. The kind of smell you only get when a door hasn't opened in a long time. "Stop," I said. I don't know who I thought would obey me. Maybe the part of the night that still liked me. Something obeyed, though. Not the door. The keys. Their patient little song ceased. The silence held. The rain beat time on the cedars. The handle twitched like it had heard someone say, "Hold on. I'm almost there." Nate spoke very carefully, like he was addressing a cornered dog. "Mr. Ward," he said, and hearing the name in the wet air made my stomach have opinions. "You kept everything in order here for a long time, sir. You kept it locked, you kept it safe, we remember. The handle didn't move. You don't have to show us," he said. "You don't have to check. We'll lock up. We'll make sure it's done right. You can rest." Silence has textures. This one had the feeling of a person standing still, in a doorway deciding whether you were worth trusting with a house full of sleeping people. The rain softened. The cedars dripped. The line on the path wavered as if a tired hand held the weight of a ring and let it sway. I said, "Because lies are for daylight. We'll come back tomorrow and fix the broken lock on the shed. We'll get the right tags for the keys and stamp the names on them like you would. We'll make sure the case is latched. If there's a door open, we'll close it. If there's a door closed that should be open, we'll open it. We'll do it right." The handle lifted a hair. The door pushed, then closed itself. The handle stood vertical again like a salute. The tiny, satisfied rattle that followed was the gentlest sound I've ever heard. It felt like thank you and don't make me come back. The line in the grit turned and went past us toward the main path, swinging in that lazy arc like the weight of a ring changing hands. We didn't follow. We stood there shivering until the cold felt less like a someone and more like weather. We locked everything we could lock. We went to the chapel because it felt wrong not to. The display latch had somehow engaged itself. I wouldn't swear to that in court, but my bones know it. On the pew, where the key had been, lay the brass tag. It was no longer blank. I picked it up with both hands like a communion wafer. The letters were shallow, clumsy and crooked, but they were there, punched into the soft metal like a man without good light or patience had rushed. Gate. Nate took a picture. Then he took another with his phone's flash off, then one with it on because none of it felt real, and we wanted to give our future selves proof that we hadn't agreed to a lie. The tag was heavy for its size. It made a little print in my palm. We left. We didn't say much in the car. I dropped Nate at his place and drove home with my wipers squeaking. I put the brass tag on my kitchen counter next to my house keys because, I don't know why, because it felt wrong to leave it anywhere else. I checked the door twice. I slept poorly. In the morning, the tag wasn't on the counter. I had that cold little joke of panic. I'm losing it. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Clemens, who hadn't texted me since she asked if I could move a trash can for her in July. It was a blurry photo of the side service gate at Pine Hollow. The padlock hung open. The chain drooped. The brass tag swung in a little. "Oval off the lock gate," she wrote. "Did you leave it open by mistake?" I called Nate. He laughed a tired laugh. "Either he brought it home and took it back," he said, "or we did." "We didn't." "Maybe we did and forgot between the car and your kitchen." "We didn't," I said again. We went back that afternoon to fix the shed lock. Deputy Morales was there, chatting with Darlene by the mums. He's one of those small-town cops who knows everyone and treats everything like he might have to live next door to it in a week. He asked if we'd heard the stories and smiled like he expected us to roll our eyes. "I hear things," he said, squinting at the cedars. "On the dash cam. Only when I idle by the fence after midnight. Just a little static, then a sound. Like coins in a pocket. Keys," I said before I could stop myself. "Could be," he said. "Could be that old chain on the service gate tapping the post. Weather does that." He said it as if he believed both possibilities the same amount. We showed him the brass tag and he grinned. "Nice touch," he said. "Mr. Ward would appreciate it. He was particular." We fixed the shed lock. We labeled the spare keys we found in the little office. We tightened the latch on the display case. We did every ordinary living thing we could. That night I didn't plan to go back. Then at 9 my phone chimed with a voicemail. No number, just unknown. I played it. It was 5 seconds long. Rain. A small, close rattle. The sound of a latch moving. And then a breath right at the microphone. One slow, relieved exhale. I put on shoes without knowing I was doing it. When I stepped into the hallway, my apartment's front door chain lifted and fell once gently, with a sound like metal deciding not to remember a shape. I slept with the light on. The days since have been ordinary in the kind of way that makes you nervous. We go to Pine Hollow at dusk to check the doors we know and a few we didn't before. Sometimes the handle on a mausoleum will be vertical when it should be horizontal. Sometimes a gate that needed oil will swing silent as a secret. Once the chapel's display case had a new smudge shaped like a ring being set down. We wipe it off and pretend our cloths didn't come away streaked like they touched something that was never warm. We leave the brass tag on the service gate. Now. We made others the way the first one looks. Letters crooked and shallow because it felt right. We stamped shed and chapel and Reading and Maine with our clumsy hands. They swing in the weather and tap little circles into the posts. We've got a recording too. 2, actually. Nate keeps them on his phone. If you put in earbuds and close your eyes, you can hear a key turn in an old lock and a handle settle flat with a patient click. Sometimes in the background you can hear one of us breathe. Sometimes I think I hear a second breath, slower, older, timed to the rain. I don't know what you believe about the dead. I didn't believe much. I still don't, not in a way that fits in a sentence. I just know a man who kept order left a ring behind, and maybe the ring kept him too. I know there are doors that want to be as they should be and a set of hands that can't stand it when they aren't. I know that sometimes kindness looks like checking the latch twice before you leave a place you loved. When I cut across Pine Hollow now in daylight, it's the same as it always was. Grass, stone, birds making a racket in the cedars. The wind chimes at the Reese grave tick like an old clock. And every so often, when nobody else is on the path, and the shadows are just long enough to braid together, I hear the weight of metal shift in the air ahead of me. Not loud, not close. Just there the way a habit is there after the person who started it is gone. If I'm alone, I stop where the sound is and say, "We got it." Sometimes, so quiet I think I imagined it. The keys answer. And the door in front of me, whichever door I'm about to pass, settles a little, as if it had been waiting for permission to stay shut. Or to open. I don't ask which. I've learned not to over-explain. I've learned to listen to the smallest noises, and I don't keep my own keys on a ring anymore. I keep them separate, each in a different pocket. That way, if something follows me home at night, it has to choose which one to lift, and maybe it will get tired and go back to where the names on the tags are the only ones that matter. I called Nate. He laughed a tired laugh. "Either he brought it home and took it back," he said, "or we did." "We didn't." "Maybe we did and forgot between the car and your kitchen." "We didn't," I said again. We went back, that afternoon, to fix the shed lock. Deputy Morales was there, chatting with Darlene by the mums. He's one of those small-town cops who knows everyone and treats everything like he might have to live next door to it in a week. He asked if we'd heard the stories and smiled like he expected us to roll our eyes. "I hear things," he said, squinting at the cedars. "On the dash cam. Only when I idle by the fence after midnight. Just a little static, then a sound. Like coins in a pocket. Keys," I said before I could stop myself. Could be, he said. Could be that old chain on the service gate tapping the post. Weather does that. He said it as if he believed both possibilities the same amount. We showed him the brass tag and he grinned. Nice touch, he said. Mr. Ward would appreciate it. He was particular. We fixed the shed lock. We labeled the spare keys we found in the little office. We tightened the latch on the display case. We did every ordinary living thing we could. That night I didn't plan to go back. Then at 9 my phone chimed with a voicemail. No number, just unknown. I played it. It was 5 seconds long. Rain. A small, close rattle. The sound of a latch moving. And then a breath right at the microphone. One slow, relieved exhale. I put on shoes without knowing I was doing it. When I stepped into the hallway, my apartment's front door chain lifted and fell once gently, with a sound like metal deciding not to remember a shape. I slept with the light on. The days since have been ordinary in the kind of way that makes you nervous. We go to Pine Hollow at dusk to check the doors we know and a few we didn't before. Sometimes the handle on a mausoleum will be vertical when it should be horizontal. Sometimes a gate that needed oil will swing silent as a secret. Once the chapel's display case had a new smudge shaped like a ring being set down. We wipe it off and pretend our cloths didn't come away streaked like they touched something that was never warm. We leave the brass tag on the service gate. Now. We made others the way the first one looks, letters crooked and shallow because it felt right. We stamped shed and chapel and Reading and Maine with our clumsy hands. They swing in the weather and tap little circles into the posts. We've got a recording too. 2, actually. Nate keeps them on his phone. If you put in earbuds and close your eyes, you can hear a key turn and an old lock and a handle settle flat with a patient click. Sometimes in the background you can hear one of us breathe. Sometimes I think I hear a second breath, slower, older, timed to the rain. I don't know what you believe about the dead. I didn't believe much. I still don't, not in a way that fits in a sentence. I just know a man who kept order left a ring behind, and maybe the ring kept him too. I know there are doors that want to be as they should be and a set of hands that can't stand it when they aren't. I know that sometimes kindness looks like checking the latch twice before you leave a place you loved. When I cut across Pine Hollow now in daylight, it's the same as it always was. Grass, stone, birds making a racket in the cedars. The wind chimes at the Reese grave tick like an old clock. And every so often, when nobody else is on the path, and the shadows are just long enough to braid together, I hear the weight of metal shift in the air ahead of me. Not loud, not close. Just there the way a habit is there after the person who started it is gone. If I'm alone, I stop where the sound is and say, "We got it." Sometimes, so quiet I think I imagined it, the keys answer, and the door in front of me, whichever door I'm about to pass, settles a little, as if it had been waiting for permission to stay shut, or to open. I don't ask which. I've learned not to over-explain. I've learned to listen to the smallest noises, and I don't keep my own keys on a ring anymore. I keep them separate, each in a different pocket. That way, if something follows me home at night, it has to choose which one to lift, and maybe it will get tired and go back to where the names on the tags are the only ones that matter.